This interview is about Bryan Conner. He's an American singer and songwriter and the frontman for the country music band Highway Down. His travels go from Arizona to the Southern California area in the 70s and 80s, back to Nashville, back to California, and then he ends up in Colorado. This is his adventure. This is the interview, and you need to check it out. Welcome to KGXT, Gen X Talks podcast, live from Central California.
Making plans with the boys. I'm gonna hit the town. Yeah, I'm gonna make some noise. I'll push past the pain and my wounded pride. I'm gonna live it up. Yeah, stay out all night. But sure, I've had some better times. And I can't count all the tears I've cried. And maybe down my last time. Yeah, but the blues to me just fine.
Need to get done.
All right, so you got it. It's another interview, Gen X Talks live. Now, it's not live for you guys, live for some, but not everybody. This is not the podcast where my wife beats the shit out of me for an hour. No. Those drop every Friday. These are the interviews. These are the ones that are coming along. I think we're on interview 2,943, and if you missed all the other ones, that's on you. But you can start with this one. This is really interesting. Let me tell you that I have been looking forward to this interview for a long time. It's a very old friend of mine, and we spent too much time reconnecting when we should have been recording. We told all the interesting stories without you, so now you get the boring stuff. But I'm going to bring in a friend of mine. His name's Bryan Conner, and he's been a musician probably his whole life. We'll find out the rest of the story in a minute, but we'll start with Bryan. Thank you for driving out here. You did not need to come all this way, and you did. I really appreciate it.
Bakersfield. Got to come out to the Bakersfield once in a while. Man, it's legendary.
Well,
especially when it comes to music, right?
Oh yeah, Bakersfield's quite the town. And how does did you notice that where your stage was before, it's now a garden?
I've noticed a few things have changed. I do recall the yard. A few things have changed.
We had two concerts here with you when you were the lead.
We did.
And Highway
One was
Down.
very cold and one was very hot.
Unbelievable. Yeah. We picked two concerts. We did them live, made a big deal about them. One of them turned out to be the hottest day of the summer. Yeah. It was like 119 or something.
It was.
And
blistering.
Everyone's dying. And then the other one we did turned out to be the coldest day of the year. Yeah. And everybody was frozen. I got to apologize.
Man, was it an omen? I mean, what's going on here? Should I be here right now?
Yeah, what's going to be faultless today?
Yeah. So far, so good, man.
Yeah, I think we're all right.
No disasters.
Is where you're sitting in the KGXT studios. Used to be a play set when you were here before. Yeah. But all the kids are gone.
Look at that. It kind of still looks like one, but
yeah, it does. Well, a grown-up play set. Yeah, but we moved that out and moved this in. So for those of you who don't know, when you guys listen to our podcast, when you guys listen to the interviews, the intro music is Highway Down. You're listening to Bryan sing. The exit music, that 30 or 40 seconds of the exit music, that's Bryan. These are the songs that he's written, he's produced them, he sang on them. They're his. And Highway Down was a small part of his entire life, but for me, that was the mecca of anything to do with music. Remember, I'm just a dumb mechanic in the middle of the desert. I use a lot of $3 words. Knowing somebody at his level of talent was foreign to me. And believe me, I was a fanboy from day one. I absorbed the whole thing, and I just wanted to be part of it. Do you even remember how we met? Because I tried to remember the other day, and I can't remember where it was.
I think we were in the process of, perhaps we'd already completed the album, and a mutual friend of ours, Eric Williams, who happened to be the bass player and contributed to that album, knew you.
Yeah,
prior.
And we kind
there
of
was
knew
a connection.
Each other.
Jack Mandel, I think there were a few names.
John Sharavalo.
Okay.
There was a couple outside people that we kind of, when Eric was in studio and we did an interview with him, we talked about all the places, the big events he was at and I was at. We were either just missing each other
there you go.
In the 80s, or we were right there but didn't know each other.
Okay, so you actually didn't know each other. See, I've never gotten the complete story then. So it was like friend of a friend sort of thing.
It was friend of a friend. It's like, I knew this guy from Sharavalo. There was this big gig down in Anaheim, and he'd say, I was at that gig. You were? Yeah, well, I didn't know. I was drinking in this corner. He was drinking in that corner.
Yeah.
It was a lot of those type of situations where we just missed each other. I physically don't remember the first time that I met Eric. He couldn't remember either. Or you. I don't remember when I first shook your hand. I can't place it.
I don't know exactly how that came about, but I do recall that connection. So it must have been.
Did I come see you guys play someplace? Is that maybe?
I'm not really sure. I don't recall that. I think we had just been posting some of our material and whatnot. And again, I'm not sure we had completed the album, but it somehow made it to you.
I think you did. I think one of the first things Eric did was send me your Highway Down CD. And I was like, okay, this is really good stuff. Yeah. This is great stuff. And then I think we put together, you guys had done a couple small gigs. And then I know I was trying to get you to do I was lining up some small gigs around town for you. And then I said, let's just do it in my yard. I remember we had one and we're like, let's just do it here. And we had the radio stations show up. We got as many bigwigs as we could here. And they're suffering in freezing cold or heat like we were. Terrible timing on my part. But that's...
Who's to know, though?
What's that?
Who's to know? I mean,
but I remember trying to maybe force my way into the band isn't the right answer, but I remember trying so hard to go, well, what are you guys looking for? And someone say, well, we need some more gigs. We need to get in front of some people that can notice us. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And I remember my wife going, you have no idea how to do that. You know nothing about the music industry. I'm like, I got a CD in my hand and I'm very persuasive. And I remember going out and knocking on doors trying to get people to listen. That's my memory. That's one of my memories with you guys.
Which is a tough gig, being the icebreaker, trying to get people to listen. That's always the tough part, just getting an audience.
Yeah.
That's never changed, I mean, I think, unfortunately, it's saturated and most people are jaded in the business. And I think there's sort of almost a predisposition to disappointment, where you're just like expecting disappointment.
Right.
So you just kind of avoid people in the business, which is sad because if you're jaded, you really don't open yourself up to new.
Well, I hadn't done that long enough with you guys to be disappointed. I mean, perhaps you're right. If I'd have done that for a couple of years, I would have been, okay, this doesn't make sense.
This is the way it is. Yeah.
I remember I went into one of the local country music radio stations here. I'd made a point. I didn't even know what a program director was. You guys had to tell me, you don't want to talk to a DJ, you want to talk to a program director. I was like, okay. And then you guys told me they're never going to play our songs. And I'm like, yeah, they will. And I remember finally getting into one of the program directors and sitting with him. He gave me a very clear education on how this works. I gave him the hold the record up to the window story. And he said, those days are gone. Get them out of your head. He said, a company will come in and say, all right, we have this new country album, and these are the top 5 songs. We want them played in this order over the next year, and we're going to fund your tractor pull. We're going to fund your concerts. We're going to fund part of your radio station payroll. And they come in with, $500,000 every quarter, and they lay it on him, and they say, but we have control over what you play and when. Now, he told me that not only includes when their songs go in, but they can keep other songs out.
Sure.
They help decide. I go, okay. I remember sitting in his office going, yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I go, whatever happened to you guys just having some balls and coming out there and going, come on, man, we're going to play some stuff. We'll take one for the home team. Because he had already listened to your record.
Yeah.
I'd given it to him before, and he goes, there's a lot of good stuff on here. Yeah. This is the second thing he told me. He said, just so you know, some of the greatest music I've ever heard in my life is never going to be heard by anybody.
Sad, but true.
Ever. And I went, I go, dude,
it's a shame.
I'm getting disenchanted here. Yeah. You're making me upset. I go, I'm getting frustrated. And I said, so they absolutely have ultimate control. He goes, maybe I could sneak in one song a day in a 24-hour period, and they probably wouldn't say anything. But if I did anything outside of that as program director, there would be a guy down here driving to my office the next day going, we're signing your checks, do what we say. And I remember I said, well, can you play this for me, please? And he did. I actually got some of your songs on this one radio station for about a week, I think one a day. and he did play them at a pretty cool time, but it just wasn't enough to catch. And I was so thankful to that guy. I'm like, dude, I can't even tell you how much this means to me, especially knowing what you've told me. And he told me the only reason I did is because I'm the only guy in his entire career that has come tracked him down and said, can you please do this? I don't get what the fuck is going on. I want people to hear good music, and here it is. Yeah. And he goes, he told me he did it for that reason. Now, did that help? Not at all. It didn't help you guys get anywhere, but I remember feeling great that I got it on the radio, but I also remember the frustration of him saying, it's never going to happen again, and don't think you can do this with every radio station because most of them are going to tell you no.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do.
Well, they're owned and managed by corporate interest, and they have their agenda. Whatever they put their money into, that's what's going to succeed, and whatever the money doesn't back.
But Bryan, they choose what song is going to be.
Of course,
your
trust me,
favorite song.
I'm angered. I'm frustrated by it because there's so much mediocrity on the radio.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I get. There are obvious talents that succeed, and you go, well, that's obvious, right?
Right.
They got the voice, they got the chops, they got all of the, all the qualities that make up successful artists. But then there's just a whole lot, and it's such a shame because the town is so full of great songwriters, as far as Nashville's concerned.
Yeah.
And there are so many. I'm going to say great songs out there that probably they're never going to be heard because people don't have the will to actually put out what's best. It's almost like this sort of reading the room and finding what the kids are into these days as a method of putting music out, when instead you should be the gatekeeper of great music. And I'm not I'm not into like this sort of foisting it upon society, like, well, we know what's best for you, like government,
right? No, I'm with you.
Big Brother, that sort of thing. But it's like somebody should stand up and sort of testify to what is good and what is bad,
right?
And make a point of pointing out what is bloody awful,
right?
And you go, what? You're missing out.
If there's a whole section of music that we all agree is kind of shitty, but it's bubblegum popular, you know what? Make a whole radio station for that. But why can't we cut the cool shit over here? Why not?
Yeah. I don't get it. Yeah. I mean, some of it. I mean, there's some some artists like Chris Stapleton and whatnot. Some of these guys have finally risen to the top, because I believe that cream rises to the top ultimately.
Well, let's back up. Let's go back to the beginning. We can catch back up with our Highway Down days later. Where were you born and raised? Was this always a thing? Were you around music your whole life?
Well, I was born in Tucson, Arizona, August 8th, 1973, and spent the first, I guess, probably up till I was 3, 4 years old in parts of Arizona. My dad is a minister, pastor, has been all my life. He's also a guitar player, was a huge...
Is that where you got your first interest in that?
I would say that music has always been a part of my life. He was a huge fan of Chet Atkins, so I grew up listening to Chet Atkins and Southern gospel.
Sure.
Midwesterners, he's from Texas, my mom's from Indiana, so I grew up with that sort of culture.
Right.
Southern gospel culture, and grew up singing in church, and that's where, I learned how to sing harmonies. And I actually enjoy singing harmony more than anything. I mean, more than a lead, I would rather sing a background part, to be honest with you.
Really?
I'm just as happy doing that. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of being in the limelight. I'm just as happy.
You were good at it. You really know how to work the crowd, man. I mean, you really did a good job.
There are moments. I think, like anyone, everyone loves the affirmation of an audience and a good performance. And you get the reaction from people, especially if you put your heart and soul into something. But I think some people just naturally kind of gravitate, and I'm a bit of an introvert.
We had to, I think we had to push you to the front of the stage.
Yeah, I do have a problem.
You grabbing the microphone.
I think even Eric mentioned we got to give you lead singer syndrome. We got to like somehow, and I don't have that naturally. I have to work at it. Yeah, you do recall that, right?
I do remember him saying that, like, this guy needs some lead singer syndrome where he's got to be like wants to be out there. Yeah,
yeah, it is funny. I thought that was a good way of putting it. But so I usually avoid the limelight. I find more satisfaction, kind of introspection, in the studio.
Yeah.
Writing the songs and seeing those songs come to fruition. That far greater reward than going up on stage and getting people all worked up. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool, but I don't know. I love that creative process.
I see more people saying that in the music industry, saying that some of their greatest moments, no one was around when they first get a song to its completion and they can play it back.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah,
to feel like, wait a minute, I got something here.
Yeah,
it's unique.
You created
it's a gem.
Something.
It's something.
Huge.
And perhaps your baby, and I think that's the hardest part too, is letting go of that too, because sometimes, I've met a lot of artists and songwriters and people that. They're always working on something, but never able to release it. And I think it's the fear of just, letting people down or getting the reaction.
And letting it go.
And letting it go. Yeah. It's like at some point, I think even Phil Collins has said it, sometimes you just have to abandon it. You just, at some point, you just have to leave it alone, put it out to the world. You have to be willing to disappoint people.
How do you make
just
yourself okay with that? How do you become okay with letting it go? First of all, it's out of your control sometimes once you let it go.
Absolutely.
And then you say it could be a disappointment. And then what?
It becomes a life of its own. And you just have to allow people to have the reaction that they have, and it becomes a life of its own.
Wow.
And it is a difficult thing to do as an artist, but it's imperative. Otherwise, you're never going to make any progress.
Well, let's go back to when you said you were 3, 4, 5 years old. Your dad was a preacher, you played guitar. You grew up in the church singing. You learned how to play a little bit, I'm sure, from him. What is the next step? What happens? Where were you spending your teenage years? What were you doing then? By then, you had to be a little more interested.
Well, I've always been a bit of an adventurous soul, like any kid. My grandmother, actually, of all people, was the one that taught me how to fish. Love fishing to this day. Loved outdoor activities, and I played Little League ball for about 4 years.
We're still in Arizona, right?
I'm not. We're now in California. So we moved from Bisbee, Arizona, a mining town, to, I believe it was Santa Paula.
All right.
Because my dad had met my mother in Oxnard, California, and my grandfather, her father, was stationed there at the port there.
Yeah.
And so they had met in church. They had attended a church there in Oxnard, California. My dad had come out here, a little hazy on all the details, but basically his mom and dad had moved out to Southern California, Oxnard, and so they were attending that church. And that my dad was just kind of feeling the calling to ministry at that point.
Right.
Still a player. His mom had discouraged him. He had some, actually pretty incredible opportunities as a young person to actually go out and play full time.
Really?
As a working musician, had been courted by artists and whatnot, and my grandmother discouraged him from that because she didn't want that lifestyle for him.
Sure. Well, I understand.
And because he had seen some things, and so I get it. So he chose ministry. He chose a path that he felt God called him, and God bless him for that. Makes me the man that I am today, because of the way I was raised. So, but anyway, so I guess long story longer, we ended up in Santa Paula at some point where he decided to take a church and pastor a church there. And I just remember some vague memories of running through the
So you were still
grove.
young then. This was probably...
Yeah, I was like 6, 7 years old.
Right.
And got my first taste of beer, as a matter of fact, in Santa Paula at like 7 years old. Never recall that. We were playing, me and a friend, couldn't tell you his name, but running through the orchards, and, and the dirt fields, and all that's this entire area is series of orchards and rough terrain and farmland. So I remember coming in, we were hot and all worked up a sweat, and this boy's mother said, "Are you thirsty?" And then proceeds. I remember these little Dixie cups, and her opening the refrigerator and popping a can of. I'm pretty sure it was my first. It was Budweiser.
Wow.
I can still recall the taste today. Isn't that crazy? And pours it in a cup.
Because that's what you do. If your 7-year-olds have been running around,
yeah,
hey, you guys look like you need a beer. You've been out running around.
Rehydrate, right? Yeah, because that works. And I mean, she would probably end up being prosecuted for a crime.
Oh, you couldn't. Yeah. If anybody found out these days, they'd take your kids away.
But I'll never forget that first date and spitting out and go, "What the heck is that?"
Your soda's no good.
Yeah, your soda. Something's wrong with your soda
is this
pop.
Diet.
Yeah. So anyway, and then we moved from Santa Paula at some point. My dad felt the calling to go start a church from scratch in Simi Valley.
Simi Valley.
In 1980.
Simi Valley was just becoming into its own in the 80s. I mean,
correct.
The freeway had just gone from the valley
It was still fringe, man. It was like out there. Like, whoa, you're out where?
Yeah, you're in
Simi Valley? Like,
do they have phones out there?
What was that, Joe Dirt, that movie? On like the whole thing about,
That's right.
Simi Valley. So it was the beginnings of, what.
We weren't that far apart at that point because I was in the valley.
You were
and I was in the San Fernando Valley. You were in Simi Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like we couldn't ride our bikes to each other, but it wasn't that far. When you take the Santa Susana Pass, it's not very far.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got to get past the
hurdle
and the ranch out there where Charles Manson.
Yeah, that place. I've gone over that pass quite a bit. It's actually a pretty cool little pass through there. But so moved to Simi in 1980 and spent the better part of my youth in Simi Valley. Went to school there, graduated Royal High School.
Well, when you were in high school, were you part of a band? Did you play any gigs? You start doing some stuff there?
So the music thing. So I played Little League ball from about, I guess I started playing Little League ball. I was, probably 9, something like that.
Yeah.
I was a pitcher. Loved to throw and found out I was pretty good at it and got recruited as pitcher. Unfortunately, as a young man, I shouldn't have been throwing junk balls, and I had a bunch of drunks for coaches, and they were just there to have a good time, and they weren't really thinking about
that's because Bad News Bears was an actual documentary, and people don't
realize
it was a documentary.
That. You're right. You're right.
They don't understand
I'll never forget going to a Dodgers game. The entire team and our coaches brought now, granted, they were driving us to the game. Okay?
Yeah.
This is how traumatized I was as a kid. Okay. Our coaches, Little League coaches, had brought their own homemade moonshine to the Los Angeles Dodgers game.
Wow.
Okay. Proceeded to drink there while we were there and on our way back. We almost got kicked out of the game for a couple of the guys, our coaches, drunk dads, heckling. We almost got kicked. I'll never forget that. And meanwhile, my poor folks, they had no idea. They just think this, my kid's going and, having a good time with,
Responsible coach.
Yeah. And this is the sort of upbringing. And, and I probably wouldn't trade it for the world because it's amazing. I have these stories and these things in my head, these memories. And perhaps, I'm not justifying it.
No, but it was the time we lived in.
It was. It was crazy. It was wild, man. So anyway, unfortunately, I threw my arm out after about 4 years of ball, throwing sliders and junk balls.
Stuff you're not supposed to throw.
And to this day, it's been an issue. I've got some, I've found out good chiropractic work has made a big difference in the last 10 years of my life. And so I occasionally need to get worked out. It helps. But, and then I became the skater. I got fascinated with skating because it was like, Tony Hawk and the whole, the whole
I'm still
Venice
not
crowd.
That you're playing music yet, man.
You're right.
Wow.
I'm getting there. You want a story or not?
Yeah,
okay.
I would have thought that you were.
No, I didn't grow up singing, man. Like, I wasn't born singing. Let's put it that way.
All right.
And maybe I did. I just don't recall it being the greatest part of my life. But this is where the story of music comes in. Okay, started skating, started hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? Because that's what skaters did, It's the rebel crowd. They were like it's the non-sport sport.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. It was just kind of this outsider, this punk crowd.
Right.
But I just discovered that I didn't identify with the culture of skating in terms of the music. I didn't identify with the sort of punk crowd.
Yeah.
I wasn't really a rebel rouser in that regard. I came from a nice, middle class, Midwestern, traditional Christian value home. And I didn't really identify.
You didn't fit the mid-'80s skater look at all then. You didn't have
not at all.
I was black Converse, the pink Liberty Spike mohawk.
No, I wasn't.
The leather jacket with chains everywhere.
I had two parents in the house. It wasn't like I didn't have TV in the house growing up, right? So all of my upbringing really just became exposed to this sort of other world once I became a skater.
Yeah,
right?
Once you were out of the house, you get school, you get church, you get friends, but if you don't have TV and all that, then whatever your experiences are, it's out in the world.
And it was.
At that time.
And so hanging out with my friends, and here's where the music comes in, is, while they're listening to Rancid and Suicidal Tendencies, and I started hearing, guys like John Mellencamp and the Eagles, and on occasion, and then of course MTV had exploded at that point. And I remember seeing, I think the first video I ever saw was like Oingo Boingo. That was like some of the first videos on MTV. So I was fascinated with it, right? Of course, I grew up in church. Everything was, Southern gospel and hymns, and so I started being acclimated to this other countryish, country rock, Americana sort of music. And I identified with that sort of music probably because of my Southern kind of
connection.
Yeah, Southern Midwestern sort of roots. And so I just found myself being drawn to that. And it became sort of a desire of mine to just start writing songs. And that's where I just started. I got my first guitar. I think it was an electric guitar. My dad signed me up for some lessons. World music.
Say, at some point, even if you have the desire and the interest, you have to learn what notes are.
Correct.
You have to, at some point, that has to become part of it.
And my bless his heart, my dad, though I'm sure he wouldn't mind trying to teach me. He's a terrible teacher in that regard. He's a great teacher behind the pulpit.
Right.
Great, terrible guitar teacher, right? They just didn't have the patience for it. And, and he would spend hours as a kid, practicing his guitar to become, the guitarist that he'd become. And so I think that was probably, his solution for me. It was just like, well, go practice, kid. That's
right.
Maybe inadvertently, he didn't say that out loud.
A little bit different than going and learning to hit a baseball, though. Practicing the guitar, you need people to teach you the next step. True.
You need some basics, chord structure, and so I took some lessons. Terrible guitar teacher. I remember it was like, I think after like 2 or 3 lessons, it was like, we weren't getting anywhere. I could just see the frustration. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I was a bad student, But I could see the frustration guitar teachers, like face, like, oh my God, another clown, fool, kid, like,
they're
get
getting
me out
paid.
of here.
You'll get through it. Come on.
Well, I figured out in life, some people shouldn't be doing what they're doing for a living. There's quite a few people out there,
no kidding,
like that, unfortunately. But so I was a little traumatized. So I never really was drawn to chops per se, but I've always been drawn to melody and songs and harmonies and lyrics, and so that was kind of my introduction to it, was just knowing I wasn't really into that whole Southern California punk thing,
right?
But I definitely could relate to that sort of Americana, song thing, where it's...
But it still didn't get you anywhere in high school. You weren't like playing the high school, football game.
I was too shy.
Not playing in a band.
No, I was too shy. I admired, there were a lot of young bands that actually got signed while I was in high school. Didn't necessarily go too far, but I remember seeing some young guys actually had bands. I can't recall their names now, and they've had a series of deals over the years. So I had this fascination with songs, songwriting, and and I love a great band. I mean, like the next guy, you go and see this great band, this chemistry, it's unbelievable, But what I was drawn to were, of course, at that point, you had CDs and cassettes. Well, you had CDs, you had cassettes, and then you had CDs, and I would just go to the liner notes. Like people would go to the albums.
Right, album jackets and whatnot,
But more than just bands, I became a fan of this sort of Nashville songwriting combination production and the studio musicians that played on these albums.
Studio set guys,
Because, of course, L.A., you had the Wrecking Crew, you had, Waddy Wachtel and Russ Kunkel and James Gadd or Steve Gadd, so not James Gadd, but there's a whole series of people, Jeff Porcaro Brothers, Toto. I mean, those guys cut, I don't know how many records, like thousands of records they've played on. So there's this whole world of the studio.
Why weren't you drawn, you were so close to L.A., Simi Valley's not that far from L.A., how come you didn't gravitate towards that scene of being a studio guy? You certainly could have later, and when you develop, you certainly could have.
Because it's changed so much. By the time that I came around, it's just changed. I have friends, obviously, still that's what they do. They play for a living, you know, and they cut records, and LA's become a TV town. So really, if you're cutting a record, you're going to go to Nashville. That's where all the records are being cut. Country is the new pop, and that's where, same thing with modern, gospel music and contemporary Christian and all this stuff. It's all made in Nashville, right? So that's the hub.
Right.
LA is a TV town, and so pretty much anybody that works in the music business, unless you're like Adele or some major star, right? You're cutting records, or not cutting records, but you're cutting jingles, basically, or parts for TV, and that's how you make your living here. And I'm not really interested in that.
No, I could see that.
I've had, obviously, we could talk about that too. And we had conflict of interest on some of the music you were using, and I had a deal with a publishing company that was placed for TV and whatnot. It became an issue.
I don't think I told you about that in too much detail, but I put one of your songs. I called you years ago, and I said, "Hey, is it okay if I?" And you're like, "Yeah, go ahead." And this is years ago. And so I added a little bit of your song to one of our podcasts. We didn't.
You got shut down,
listeners,
or they threatened.
It went to an arbitration with YouTube. They said you don't have permission, you can't use it, and it's not like they were willing to add revenue share. They were like, we're taking every penny. Okay, our podcast episode, if we left it up for 6 months, we might make $13.
Yeah,
we didn't have anybody listening. And I thought it's more for fun and nostalgia and for friends, then we're not trying to make money at this. This is not a money-making opportunity. And they're like, well, you can't do it. So I wrote them a letter. There's an arbitration thing with YouTube. When they shut you down, you can write them and say, you can dispute it. And I did. And so I wrote this whole thing. I finally got a phone call from one of those guys, and they said, well, what do you mean you have permission? I go, he's my fucking friend. He said I could do it. He said, well, you need a contract. I said, okay, look, I'm just telling you. I even gave him your phone number. I said, here's his phone number.
Call him, damn it.
Call him. Yeah. Call him up and ask him. Let's get this shit out of the way, because I was so mad.
If only it worked that way, right?
Yeah, and the guy's like, that's not how it goes. We don't give a shit who this guy is. We don't know who this phone number is even legit. And so we got into this kind of a Mexican standoff situation with them, with YouTube, and whoever you had signed your agreement with, and me, and everyone's pointing the finger, and I'm like, okay, I could have solved it all by just backing down, and I'm generally not that guy.
Yeah.
And then we kind of left it alone. It was like, well, if you don't do this anymore, then we'll leave it alone. And I remember writing letters to the guy at that company, your guy you'd signed with, and I said, okay, well, pay attention. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm just not doing it on YouTube. And now you guys aren't getting anything, because I'm going to do this other places where I don't have to worry about this shit. So now you get nothing. You should have been cool with me about it, but you can fuck off. You're not going to get one record sale from me. I'm not going to promote it. You're not going to get. I go, and he goes, we don't care. We don't give a shit at all. Don't do it. I said, so you're not really representing Bryan Conner and Highway Down.
They represent their own interests.
Right. What you can't get it your way, you don't care because he's nothing and I'm a nobody, and you'd rather just fuck off. Other than saying, yeah, we'll take 5 minutes, we'll work something out with you, and we'll revenue share. Yeah. They wouldn't do it at all.
No. I think it's actually the name of the company that they use is called RevShare or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I was having to be very careful about what I said. Yeah,
sorry, man. Sometimes mistakenly, I've gotten involved in things thinking it's like, oh yeah, what could it hurt? And then before you know it, it's like, I didn't agree to this. Yeah, that's bullshit. I should be able to use my own material. I created this.
Right.
It's mine.
Yours.
Well, yeah, you can, but it's like.
There's a whole paragraph that goes along with that shit.
Yeah.
It did it to me 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Now, you said you got rid of that company.
I have no agreement with them whatsoever.
So
everything's prior. So anything that I had allowed them to use prior, they can collect on things past, but nothing moving forward.
So if I were to put out a Highway Down song on YouTube right now,
as far as I know, because I told them I've removed them from all publishing rights as a shared publisher at ASCAP. I had to physically go in and remove them,
right?
Because basically it's like, well, they get 50%, I get 50%, sort of thing.
Well, just so
I've removed, and so they did.
I went on when it very seldom does something pop up. I'm very careful about what we do with music and licensed content. But I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I just put up a podcast where I use the Blues Suit Me just fine at the beginning, and then I use Here and Now at the end, same as I always do, just a few seconds of each one. And it came up a few days later with a 2 arrow pointing 2 directions, which means I'm splitting revenue with somebody.
Well, I have my own publishing.
Now that's what it came up. It came up with your name.
Yeah.
It says Bryan Conner has claimed this and it wants to revenue share. Whatever your situation was, it didn't shut me down. It didn't say you can't use this because that's what some of them say.
Okay.
Some will say no, you got to pull it.
Yeah. Now, as an ASCAP member, I have my own publishing set up.
Well, I just left it. I didn't contest it. I just you can click a button that says agree.
Yeah.
But because there was no company name attached to it, it was just your name. I said, well, revenue share, I don't care. It's $13, man. I don't mind at all. I didn't, because it was you.
Okay.
And I'm like, because you and I were going to talk about different.
Yeah, but I don't have any agreement with RevShare. It would be YouTube, I guess.
Right. It was YouTube to.
Because I monetize my. Of course, you want to monetize. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't
you? As an artist. So that's probably what it is, because I'm monetizing it and you're using my material.
Right. Well,
I would have to go to YouTube and say, hey, I have an agreement.
Well, you and I would have to come to a written contract where you said, I have permission to use it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Then anything outside of that, like.
Which we did. We do have.
We do have, but we haven't written it down. We didn't sign anything.
We didn't sign it. I sent it to you.
You did?
Yeah, I've sent it to you.
Did you really?
Last year I sent it to you.
Holy shit! Don't I feel like the horse's ass?
Yeah, I sent it to you.
What one of our conversations with you being here was going to be, okay, so if I turn in the form to them and they say, okay, you can use it, then I can come to you and work it. We kind of talked about,
if I get
to this much money, I'll give you.
That's exactly what we talked about.
Because it does, it isn't much, but I don't want to change those songs because to me they're personal. They really are personal.
And that means a lot to me too. And I don't want to impact what you have going on here because it's cool. You're very good at it. And, in the fact that my music means something to you, I don't want to ruin that. I mean, I encourage that, man.
You know what's funny about Highway Down is when we started doing this, I said, you know what? I'm going to play these songs and people are going to dig it. And we got so many fans, they're going to buy. I said, do you have any of these? And Eric goes, I got a trunk full of them.
Yeah.
How many do you want? I go,
it's pretty much the story of every fledgling, startup artist is, I got a trunk full of this. He
did. I drove down to his house.
He literally did. I forget how many we ordered.
He had a bunch, and I'm like,
God bless Eric. He was always I was broke then too, man. I had nothing going on, man. I really didn't. And so I depended on people that had some stability, to kind of help. And that's the thing that I think that is so discouraging as an artist is sometimes you just feel so helpless.
Right.
You're depending upon people to dig what you're doing and actually so you can be legitimate and you don't feel legitimate. You feel like a loser.
How many stories are there of people that sold records out of the trunk of their car to get going?
And I could have done that. It's just the game has changed so much, and it's pretty tough in LA, man. I think a lot of a lot of our challenges were just could have been personnel, but I mean, a lot of the challenges were just location. We're in the wrong location for what we were doing. We really were a Nashville band trying to operate in LA, and LA is just, again, it's a TV town. There's like niche groups. There's like California country. There's no such thing as California country anymore. There was a time you had the Eagles and you had Poco and you had that era, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's just like a sad, replication of days gone by. So there really isn't a scene. There's no scene. Yeah. I remember in the 80s going down to Sunset in Santa Monica, and there was a scene still.
Yeah, sure there was.
And now it's just a bunch of pay-to-play nonsense where you have to sit through, 2 hours, 3 hours of just absolute noise to hear your favorite band and pay a door fee. And it's a joke. It's a total joke, okay? And that's why I don't go out anymore, because it's a joke. I mean, there are a few places, the Write-Off Room, and there's a couple of places that I've been... they've been kind enough to they'll have me come and sit in, but it's just like,
sure.
And these are all session musicians, right? So they show up and it's like a gathering of session musicians playing the hits that they actually played. They were the original players on.
Wow.
So you get that experience. You're sitting in
with
a room.
The guy who did it, he was there.
Exactly. I've had so many wonderful experiences. This happened right before the whole, I call it pandemic, the lockdowns and all of that.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, we would go there, and it was crazy fun experience and just surreal, because you're listening and watching players that have played on all these hits, and they're playing the hits in front of you. You're like, holy crap! So there are a few things. Like that, you can still have those moments. And baked potato, and there's a few places where you get real music, but for the most part, it's just become noise. It's just noise.
Well, let me back up. What was your very first paid gig? Where the first time where someone paid you to listen? They paid to listen to your music.
It's just a bar gig. Probably Ireland's 32 or something, there in the valley.
You act like it's no big deal. It's a huge deal, man. What's your first paid gig?
It's a bar gig, It's like, get up and play for 3 hours, and then you get home, and when I say 3 hours, 3 hours without the breaks, and you have the breaks, and then, so, you start at like 10 o'clock or whatever, and you're getting home at like 2 or 3 in the morning after loadout, and it just burns you out.
And you made $80.
Yeah, really. Sometimes I made nothing, because I made sure that Eric or or Gabe or other people were paid.
I said, I was just a dumb mechanic in the middle of the desert learning from you guys what music was about.
I wasn't a mechanic, but I was still learning what music was about. And as far as the business is concerned, I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. It's very exploitative, and I get it. I understand you got to sell records in order to have a business, so I get it. But the idea that there aren't any budgets for records anymore. Nobody invests in talent to get it to the next stage. You have to do it all yourself.
Right.
Create everything, be successful, and then after you have some level of success, and then the real money shows up.
After you've done all the hard work.
And pretty much you're still doing all the hard work, because you're going to go hit the road and you're going to play 300 days a year,
There was two things Eric said in learning with you guys. Like I said, just a dumb mechanic trying to figure out the music business alongside you guys. And Eric, this is the first running joke for musicians, and I'm sure you've heard it your whole life. I didn't hear it till I got to know you guys. But like you talked about, your first gig, you drove and played for 3 hours and came home with $80 or no money. And Eric says, he goes, musicians are the only ones that'll put $7,000 or $8,000 of gear into a $200 car, drive 6 hours for a gig that pays $50.
Literally.
And that, I thought that was funny until I found out you guys, we did that. Remember that show? We did a gig at the Bullshed here in town, which was a tough bar. That was one where there was like fights in the parking lot.
Oh, I don't do that. I played a few of those. Yeah.
And so we go do this, and you guys drove all the way up here. You guys did the gig. I'm sure they didn't pay you.
That was some sort of battle of the bands, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a gig where everyone was up there, and so we're there a long time.
Yeah.
And my wife is thinking, she goes, any minute she thought I was going to get in a fight, because people just kept taunting and saying, and I'm like, you guys better shut the fuck up, because my guys are coming up on stage, and you're not going to fuck around when they're on. And I was very serious about that. So you guys go up and play. You have different sets you're doing, and then when it's all over, I think I think Gabe was like, well, we made $200, and I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. He goes, now we still got to split it. And I go, that's not going to cover the gas money. I remember talking to my wife going,
at that time it might have, but certainly it wouldn't do now, right?
But it was one of those eye-opening experiences where it's like you guys never batted an eye. You're like, yep, we'll do it. We're clear that day. We'll drive out, set up, and play. You didn't care.
What's the point? What's the point of creating all this music and then just, shelve it? It's like the whole point is to go out there and try to like figure out how to make a go of it. And I felt like I owed it to Eric and Gabe and everyone that was involved to at least make the effort,
Well, every time we set something up here in town, you guys showed up, and without ever batting an eye, without ever questioning,
I try to honor my commitments. I've unfortunately some of the bar gigs and some of the gigs, where it's like I was counting on people showing up. It's that's another thing too. It's such a jaded audience. Everybody's. It's like the open mic thing, right? Same thing. That's a whole nother phenomena of just stupidity, because it's basically a room full of artists waiting for their turn to get up, so you don't really have an audience,
right?
It's an audience of yourself, so it's pointless. It's just, what am I doing here? Just like,
I can see a lot of
putting
frustration
yourself out there
in the industry. I get it. I do.
But it's part of it, it's part of the learning curve, it's part of understanding how to get up and perform.
But you'd never know, looking at you when you're on stage. I watched you all those times on stage. Not one time did I ever see it in your face that it was a grinding industry, that you when you got up there, you did your job, and it sounded just like the day you wrote it, man. Every performance you were smiling, you guys were on target. It was great.
I think I grew up with a mom and dad that just knew their obligations. Sometimes they didn't want to get up on Sunday morning and go to church and listen to people's problems and try to,
Right.
They didn't feel encouraged. They didn't feel like going and being, encouraging, but you just get up and you do what you're supposed to do because that's what you're called to do. Okay. You made a commitment, show up and do it, So I try to live by that. If I say I'm going to do something, I may not be 100% on time, or it may not be 100% every time, but I can promise you I'm going to make
you'll be there. Good showing.
The good old college try, as they say, right?
Well, what year did you get married?
Well, I've been married twice, so God, this is terrible. You can't ask me dates. I can barely remember my birthday, man. God, I was
going to
20.
Meet you at the door with a frying pan.
Yeah, you should know better, Mark. Avoid dates. Guys are not good with dates.
Okay. Roughly, was it?
I've been married. I was married for 12 years, and it wasn't too bad. And then it did get bad. We unfortunately, I have spent a lot of time distracted, misguided, and maybe I should have just focused on the art and some of the things that keep coming back to haunt me.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I've always found, I got to figure out how to go out and make money.
Well, was the music business what ruined your marriage, or was
no, not at all.
I'm asking.
No, not at all. Actually, just what ruined a lot of people's lives in 2008 crash, financial crash, destroyed. I lost a house.
Right.
I was, of all things, of course, it's.
I had no idea that you were right on that cusp, because I met you right after that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what. It was the catalyst that changed. I go, what am I doing?
Right.
I went out to Arizona. I up to that point, I've had so many versions of myself, and I've lived. Went to Nashville in the mid '90s, and that was kind of my. We kind of skipped, but
that was where
before marriage and before all of that, I did music. It's going to get very confusing. Sorry for the audience.
Go ahead.
But before marriage and all that, of course, through high school and all that, I was actually really committed and dedicated to church ministry. I was involved in youth ministry, and I'd actually preached for quite a bit and was like a traveling evangelist and as a counselor in a boys' ranch for troubled youth. And of all places, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I lived in Louisiana for a little bit.
Really?
This is all before Nashville, okay?
All right. No, I'm putting it together, yeah.
I lived in Washington State with some cousins of mine, worked with some churches there and their youth ministry for a bit. And right out
That's
after.
a big jump from Louisiana to
Washington. Well, it was Washington first, and then Louisiana. Yes. Well,
still, but
it's all church related though, so it was really, you know.
Is that supposed to make me feel better that it makes sense because it's church? For any job you're doing to pick up and go, that doesn't matter.
Well, I'm a bit of an adventurous soul.
I
just like, hey, why not? You know, let me try it. And I had a passion for it, and I was involved. Before I'd ever left Simi Valley, I was involved in youth ministry and at my dad's church there, and so I was very involved. In that regard, and then of course started playing drums. So I played guitar for a little bit, and then like the church needed a drummer. So guess who became the drummer? My dad got a drum set for the church, and so I started playing drums. And I really like rhythm. You know, and that's kind of how I play guitar.
I just was going to throw it when you said, and so I learned drums. I was going to go, as one does. You begin to do it.
Play drums. And so that was another part of that musical journey. Played drums. And, so youth ministry, still, love music.
Right.
But still a little bit sheltered on the music part.
Before marriage.
Before marriage, definitely didn't get married that young.
Right.
So, so through all of that, eventually, I ended up, spending some time in Washington State, working with youth groups. Ended up going, I call it Louisiana, but Louisiana. Spent some time there, working with youth, and then came back and ended up courting who would become my wife at the time. And
now, did you guys go to Nashville together?
No. So this is what happened. So we were engaged. So I proposed and we were engaged, and I was going through a lot in my life. And I know you've had moments, and you've actually, I was pretty moved that you sent me a link where you had really gone through a very dark period in your life. And, and I was going through some stuff, man, really dark. Like, I would come home and stare at the ceiling for hours. Yeah. Just despair, that sort of depression.
It's kind of tough to realize what grips a man when you don't know. And you find out later, like I'm sure when you listen to that one episode that I linked you to, you probably had no idea that I had gone through that. I would have never idea. It's just challenging sometimes to find out what grips a man at different times.
But I went through mental hell period of time, and I'm not trying to say my situation's worse or not as, it's just, I just went through what I went through. Everybody goes through something, and it's like you can't take that away from somebody or diminish what they're going through. It's
not at all.
I couldn't explain it. I had this sort of just self-loathing, self-hatred, despair about me, and it got in the way of my engagement, and I actually broke it off.
Wow.
And I pulled the plug one day in California, and I just made the decision to run to Nashville. Wow. I got a of all things, a train ticket. I didn't even tell my folks because everybody was worried about me.
Sure.
So everybody's like, what's wrong with Bryan? How can we fix it? Everybody wanting to fix you.
Yeah.
And you just want to be left alone because you don't know how to explain it. And they're like, I remember going to sit my folks finally broke down and, got a therapist basically.
Right.
He talked me into going. And basically he just asked me these rhetorical sort of questions. Well, why do you feel this way? Well, duh.
Yeah.
I don't like myself very much. There's a lot of things, so what can we do to, start, and so I just felt helpless, and I felt like I was being smothered. I just felt like the world was caving in, and I pulled the plug on my engagement, and I literally, I remember there was a store, very noteworthy music store, a lot of great musicians come there, but I'd worked there briefly during my teen years, called World Music in Simi Valley. It's no longer exists. And a friend of mine, we remained friends. He had moved to Nashville, but anyhow, he was already gone. But I went there, and my drum teacher, because I'd taken some drum lessons, I said, "Hey, do you know how to get a hold of Larry Ferragilli?" Because he had moved to Nashville. I said, "I got to get out of here. I'm going to take my drum set. and I'm going to go to Nashville and make a go of it. And so he's like,
Wow.
So he managed to give me Larry's number. He gave me actually some cases, road cases, because I didn't have any road cases for my drum set.
What were you going to put your drums in? Just duffel bags?
I don't know. I was just desperate. I was just, trying to find any way, out of here, out of my desperation, this sense of despair, and get out of here. And I literally, I bought a train ticket on Amtrak. I loaded up the truck that I had at the time, and I went down to the Oxnard station. And I remember getting on the train. I left the truck there. I called my cousin, who was still here at the time, and I said, hey, tell my folks, just wait till I'm there because I don't want anybody interfering, I'm out of here. I'm going to Nashville. And so he's like, okay, whoa, shocked. And so, yeah, it was like a 3-day trip, dude. Most miserable. I'll never take a train ride.
It's a long ride.
Yeah, it was miserable. Yeah, no showers, no. It's just miserable.
Tough.
And obviously, I hadn't been the last time I've been inconvenienced or uncomfortable. But so that was the beginning of going to Nashville. That was mid '90s. I guess it was late '94 when I did that. So while I was in Nashville, lo and behold, about a year into it, the one that I broke off the relationship with managed to call me, see how I was doing.
Wow.
And so thus began the,
kind of started
recovery.
over.
Yeah, starting over. And about a year later, not even a year later, it was like 6 months later, we just, pulled the trigger and got married. And it was like a whirlwind.
Now, did you go back to California to get married? Did she come out to?
No, it was actually in Tucson, where she's from.
Okay.
I have family in Tucson. And so we got married there. And then I ended up taking her back to Nashville. So for another year or so.
Well, she was clearly supportive of your music then if she went with you on that. That's good.
I think she was unaware of it because I'm really good at keeping things under wraps. I don't like talking about things until it's a reality. That's my thing. There's a lot of people that like this whole like, oh, you gotta talk, it into existence. I maybe that's my problem. I just don't voice. I just like to do something and when it happens, then I'll tell. It's like, oh, I didn't know. It's like, yeah. Oh, by the way, I write songs. Like, oh, okay. So it was almost like that thing with her. I don't think she realized how big a part of my life it was, and for many years, I think it had a bit of a strain, especially later on because I kind of went back to the art. I got distracted with making money, trying to figure out how to make a living.
This is another question. All this time you're doing this stuff, you weren't making a ton of money. Were you surviving as a musician?
No,
I know you
not
did
at all.
construction
Not at all.
too.
Mark, let me tell you.
And you haven't mentioned construction at all.
Until you met me, I wasn't officially a musician, right? Now, I've probably always been an artist. But as far as like going out, perform, no, I'd been in my room. My sister would come bang on the door and say, hey, can you shut up? I'm playing my little folk songs, That was it. It's like nobody, took notice of Bryan's songs.
Well, I never knew that you did. I didn't know you did construction until like 6 months after we met. He's a musician and he knows how to swing.
It was one of many jobs I had because I just needed to make some money, to pay the bills like anyone. And that was 94. And as a matter of fact, I started working for a contractor in Southern California 2 weeks prior to the 94, the big quake. 2 weeks. Wow. I think it was like 2 weeks, literally. So I was like thrown headlong into just insane, like, whoa, what is this? Demo work, of course, grunt work.
A lot of work.
Man, it was a wild time. So, yeah, I learned to trade. Started out in drywall and demo and doing grunt work, and I tried to get really good at what I did so that I didn't have to do all the the heavy lifting, and I started doing all the finish work.
Well, eventually you got good all the way to finish work, fine finish work.
I have, so I didn't stay in construction because I got bored with it. It wasn't like something, and so I've just danced around. I've had every kind of job, man. I've bagged cement. I've had a pizzeria. I've been in construction. I mean, you name it, I've done. It's crazy.
So you guys get married. You go back to Nashville. You're working odd jobs there. She's working too, I'm assuming.
Valeting cars at Lowe's Hotel. So I'd see all the stars, and they give me their $1 tip, and it's like, woohoo, there's Dolly Parton, woohoo, it's like, So I
what
was
made
just
you finally pull the plug on
Kroger.
Nashville, though? What finally said, okay?
That was a mistake. I kind of look back at that as a fatal error of mine. I should have just stayed.
Really?
I do, because I came back for the wrong reasons. Because I was struggling financially. It was pretty easy living there, cheap living. Yeah, you could have survived. We had an apartment. We were happy,
Yeah.
But I got talked into coming back and get involved in the food franchise business of all things.
Huh.
So I kind of regret leaving because it was a great time. Mid-'90s were absolute, just fab.
Did you meet anybody? Did you befriend any famous people there that could have kept you going?
Well, I like, there were publishers and people. Gary McFadden, I want to, he had been a part of the kind of Southern gospel crowd, but he got into country music public because it's all kind of one family there,
right?
Everybody kind of is involved in anything that sells. You can market. So through some of the other songwriters I'd met at a church that we were attending, I had met some noteworthy people. Right?
Sure.
And so I was just fledgling. Man, did I ever get schooled? If you really want to know, now you never know it listening to country radio because most of it's a lot of gibberish.
Right.
It's lifestyle music. Woo-hoo, party.
Right.
Nothing of substance. But the songwriters that occupy that town, they'll bring you to tears.
Wow.
The education that I got when I went to Nashville humbled me, and I'll never forget it. And that's why I'm so passionate about great songs, because of what I witnessed and the kind of writers that I got to see at the Bluebird Cafe. From me to you, watching these.
But why couldn't you?
Vince Gill, perform.
We're talking about being it's tough to be a session musician in a TV town like LA, but there you are in Nashville, and you why couldn't you do something there and just fill in?
I don't think I've never had that skill set to be a session guy. Like I can sing backgrounds and there's things that I can do, but I don't have the chops. I've always acclimated to songwriting. So I've never spent a lot of time being that, tour de force behind the kid or the guitar or something like that. That wasn't my thing. I've always just been more of, a guy chasing a melody in a song,
right. All right.
And so songwriting is my thing. And that's why they call it's a songwriter's town, because it all revolves around songs.
Sure.
Session musicians are, I'm not going to say they're a dime a dozen, but there's a lot of them, and it's like get in line.
Right.
But a good song is hard to find. And granted, you'll have to go through the same process of coming up, because they're just not going to hand it to you.
Right, yeah.
They're not going to hand it to you, because a lot of these publishers have invested in their songwriters, and they have songwriter publishing deals. And so they're on the dole, right?
Yeah, they're in the mill. You're going to get their song from them.
Correct.
I'm not getting over here. I'm already paying you.
Correct. So they may like you, but they're going to go, hey, sorry, you're going to have to stick around and get in line.
Or give it to him and let him give it to me.
So it's definitely there's a lot of the business aspect of it. Nobody's cutting in line, let's put it that way.
Right. Okay.
You're going to pay your dues, And so got married, pursued the songwriting thing, obviously was humbled, and I got an education, ended up coming back to California, just,
Now, without taxing your brain, Bryan, about what year was that you came back? Because you'd already been there. You left there and came back. Where are you?
Yeah, well, that was
late 90s?
98. I think
go.
I came back 98. And then ended up, of course, that's when we got into the dreadful food business. And
what food business? Like a McDonald's or
pizzeria?
A pizzeria.
I had a pizzeria. We got involved in a franchise called Quiznos, which turned out to be a complete disaster.
Not the sub shop.
Yes, Quiznos.
Oh, Quiznos.
Yeah,
but that's Quiznos Subway. Isn't that?
Well, it was like the first instead of the cold cut, it became the baked sandwich.
Okay, I got you.
Franchise of the, but anyway. Terrible business model, very expensive, like most franchises are, and it was so it just turned out to be a depletion of finances and emotional energy, and things fell through. And I ended up opening a pizzeria in Santa Clarita, of all places, Canyon Country, and during that time, my wife got pregnant, and or she got pregnant, obviously, but and had our daughter, and now my daughter's 23.
Wow.
Getting ready to graduate college. I'm actually headed out to Indianapolis to go see her at her graduation, and through it all, she's turned out to be a fine young lady, and
despite her dad.
Despite her dad.
Wow, that's great. That's good news.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. In spite of so it's been a wild, crazy. I mean, I guess I could write a book, but I don't know. I just don't.
I can sell you this audio recording as your baseline transcript if you like. You got it down.
I'm definitely going to have to go back and look at some dates.
Oh yeah,
like get those dates right, pal. It's just all kind of hazy. It's crazy. I leave it to the women to remind me of the dates, and of course
I do too.
So we had 12 years, and off and on. It was good.
But you said
it got ugly,
the financial thing at the
it
2008.
Did. I think most divorces are caused by finances.
Sure.
I think that statistically that is a thing, And so, of course, financial strain. You're not bringing home the bacon, and things aren't working out. And I did everything I could, and there's nothing I could do at some point. I mean, it was desperate times. I remember the power being turned off in the middle of a July Arizona day, and then you're scraping bottom, man.
Yeah, well, I've been there with that. I got a story for you. I don't think I probably haven't told anybody this story. Long time ago, and my wife she's going to hear this and be mad. She's terrible with money. She just doesn't think.
I think I've heard this a few times on some of your episodes.
We had a little safe in our closet, and I'd stacked some money back there when we first moved to town years and years ago, 20 years ago, and I knew how much cash I had. We had a little in the bank, had a little in savings, and then I had, was working, trying to open a shop and get a shop running, which I didn't want to do. I had a shop in Oregon, and she goes, well, open up one here. I go, I don't know anybody
I didn't know the Oregon bit.
Yeah, I had a shop in Oregon for 9 years.
Is that where you're from originally?
I'm from the San Fernando Valley.
Oh, okay.
But my parents moved up there, and then I followed up.
Okay, sorry.
And it was Bend, Oregon, Central Oregon.
Yeah.
And I had a shop there.
I was Bend, yeah.
And so she says, well, my wife says, well, you should open one here. I said, I don't know anybody. I don't have customer one.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to do it. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, your head is up your ass. You have no idea what you're saying. That'd be like me telling you, hey, tomorrow I want you to go write a hit record and make sure it's number one on the charts by Friday.
Come on, just do it.
Just go do it.
Yeah.
That's like,
just do it, man.
My wife would be the one who gave you instructions like, well, if you want to learn how to fly a plane, get in,
start
point it the direction you want to go, and fly. That's how she thinks about this.
Mary.
So yeah. So I had this. The reason I brought up the safe is I had some money there. I want to say it was like $8,000 put away, and so a little bit in the bank, a little bit in checking, doing our things. Really struggling. All these kids, and they're all under the 8 kids under the age of 12, and I'm working 20 hours a day. It seemed like trying to make ends meet. And she called me one day. I guess we'd been here about 2 years, still struggling, and she says, I got to talk to you. I said, what? She goes, they shut off the electricity at the house. I said, why? She goes, well, I didn't pay the bill. I said, okay, well, we can pay it. She goes, well, we just paid a bunch of bills. We don't have any money in the checking account. I said, all right, we go to the safe, take out, how much do you need? She goes, $800 to turn it back on. I go, oh my God, how did it
go?
That's what I don't know. I still never figured out. Was it 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah.
Did she keep promising to them? Because somehow she strung that out longer than she should have.
Yeah, typically they'll work with you.
Yeah. So she hangs up. She calls back in half an hour crying. And she goes, there's no money in the safe. I said, what?
Why?
And I said, now I'm thinking we got robbed. I'm thinking, okay, one of my kids got into it or we got robbed. And she was crying. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, you know where this money went, don't you? She goes, I kept thinking I'd pay it back. I took $200 out this month. I take $300 out to catch up on the bills, to do the budget, because she was getting stuff done. Yeah. And I kept thinking next month I'll just scrimp and save and I'll put some back. And I never put any back. I go, how much is in there? She goes, $12. Holy
crap.
And I go, and the electricity's off. The kids are coming home from school. You've taken the $8,000 and spent it $200 at a time. I have nowhere else I can go with it. What? I had to call my mom. And I call my mom and go,
that's a
you got to help me out here. And she did. And I paid her back within a month. I had my mom paid back. I think she sent me $1,100. And so I know what it's like to be struggling and working and trying to, and things just don't go your way. That was one of them for me. It was just,
that's wild.
And you got all these kids, and they're all coming home from school, and you got to tell. She goes, "What do I tell the kids?" I go, "Tell them there's a power outage in the neighborhood."
Yeah, there you go.
Just until we get it. So we did, but
avoid the hysteria.
Those times, those were tough times. For me
it's real. It's very real.
It's very real.
Yeah, it's like you can't fake it, man. It's like, okay, what are we gonna do?
But see, if you had the financial crisis in 2008 and you got divorced and you're refiguring out your life, and we'll get to that. That it couldn't have been more than a year after that I met you, because I think that one concert we had was in 2010.
Well, we released that record 2012, right?
No,
was it?
It had to be.
Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I guess. Yeah. Again, the dates, man. Sorry. I guess it was because I came out here. It was about a year after I had, obviously.
Do you know what I ran across the other day? Those tickets we had made up.
Kidding.
We call it the hay bale.
Oh, there you go, man.
Something
you got to put in a little placard.
I got to find it and go.
Yeah, there you go.
I ran across. Oh my God! And I think it said 2010. I thought it said.
You're probably right.
So
again, it gets a little.
Right as you were losing your house and getting divorced, I was running out of electricity.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, I think 18 months is about when we met after that. That's amazing. I had no idea that our lives were going to intertwine like that.
Isn't that funny how serendipitous path, man. It's just hard to know, man. I have so many interesting encounters with people, just random places. And I think that's the amazing thing about traveling, getting around, and just I've been blessed to meet interesting people, and I guess we all have. But I never take that for granted,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the one concert we did. Do you remember when we put out all the white tables and candles, and we had Bowen's Whiskey came out and gave away free whiskey that night?
That was the summer gig.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think
are they still around? They still in business?
Bowen's Whiskey, I think so. Yeah, I don't do much with them, but they. In fact, I was going to look them up to see if they were still doing stuff locally. I was going to see if we couldn't put a Gen X Talks label.
Hey, there you go.
On some of their whiskey and give it away. Sell
marketing, man. It's all about marketing.
Do something with it because their whiskey. I don't think I drink it all the time because it had I'm going to say this wrong
smoky.
And people get mad. Yeah,
smoky.
It was a smoky or a charcoal type of.
Well, that's very specific. Some people are big fans of that. I'm not.
At the very end of when you drank it,
at
the very end, it kicked you. Whoa.
Yeah.
I had a bite of like that smoke, and it was that's a perfect description, really.
Yeah. I do recall that. There's things like taste or.
You can't remember when you got married, but you can remember the flavor of Bowen's whiskey.
It's a lot of trauma, man. I just gotta shut it out. You know what I mean? Like, holy crap. Well, that didn't go very well.
Oh my God, that's funny. So yeah, I'll tell you, to this day, when we've had some very emotional conversations with the kids, now that the kids are older and they're married or dating and have kids and they're moving on in life, we've had big family get-togethers, and every now and then they always tell a bunch of stories about how hard I was on them when they reminisce of all these things that Dad used to say and do.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, when you got 8 kids and 25 or 30 years of that, you got a lot. But every now and then they get to a point and say, "What do you and Mom remember as like the best moments of being married?" Without fail, in our top 5 best moments of, you can say first kiss you ever got, you remember, or anything like that, or excluding when kids are being born. I kind of set that aside, but all the personal things between my wife and I, every time without fail, top 5 is something you did for me. Of my entire marriage, when you played that song at our venue here, when we had 200 people out here, and I danced with her in front of the stage when you played Here and Now for me, and I made everybody get away, go sit down, I put everybody back at their tables.
Time. Yeah.
And you played that for me, and you gave me that 3 or 4 minutes there. To this day, my wife and I will tell you, of our entire marriage, that is in our top 5 memories where we just thought life was perfect at that moment and couldn't get any better. And I want you to know that. It's a true story.
Wow.
Absolutely never forget that. I've got pictures of that night and of all the people that were here and all the stuff that went on. But the highlight was when you gave that to me, and I said, "Hey, could you?" And you're like, "Yeah." I played it again, and I'm sure for you guys, it was like, "God, I gotta play this goddamn song one more time." But it turned out to be one of the greatest moments in my marriage ever. The whole world was watching us, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. And
everything drifted away, and it was just her and I, and you guys playing. And I don't think I've told that story outside of just when my kids. I've never told that to anybody. Nobody would get it. You were there. Nobody else would understand that.
Yeah.
It was a great moment. So, for nothing else, I owe you for the rest of my life for that. You gave me one of the best moments ever.
Well, I gotta say, I'm obviously flattered and I'm moved. I'm always touched when someone will tell me that my music has done something for them, and it means something to them. I mean, that is deeply touching, because it obviously meant something to me when I wrote it. So I just figured, well, if it meant something to me, it will most likely mean something to someone else. I don't know who.
Yeah, well.
But connect with somebody, and someone's going to hopefully have just like the way I listen to songs. There's things that just move me to tears, man. And it hits you wherever, I don't know, whatever you're going through, or it just hits you. And it's like, that's the beauty of music. It's just got such healing qualities,
Well, it was an amazing time in my life when you guys were around. I wish I could have done more, but I didn't know what I was doing. But I definitely, and this is the part I feel bad about, I got more from you guys than I could ever give back. I got so much benefit from learning from you guys and letting you guys allow me to fumble my way through that quasi manager thing where I was just trying to go talk to people. I'll never forget those couple of years ever. And I feel like I took more from you guys. I got way more benefit than you guys did, and I'm sorry about that. But it was an absolute pleasure to be around you guys.
Well, I can honestly say that I felt the same way how you feel. I felt like, man, this poor guy's putting all of this in, and I just don't. I feel like I'm going to disappoint him. I don't want him to spend more money and like invest all of his time and energy and be disappointed. So I mean, I'm glad you feel that way, because then I don't feel guilty, like, God, I wasted this guy's time.
No, I kept thinking I'm overstepping my bounds. I'm like, okay, they want gigs. This is a country town. I will go knock on doors until I get gigs. I mean, I knew a lot of people in town. I worked on a lot of cars. I knew a lot of people, but it turns out not so many in the country bars and the country scene. All right, well, I can go, but we all knew a lot of the same people, so I could get some introductions. I could knock on a few doors, and it was okay. And so I did. As long as you guys let me, I was still going crazy. The thing you don't know, and we could ask, in fact, I'll bring this up to my wife when we leave here. I'll say, do you remember when I was going to do this? And she'll go, I do. You watch. This is a true story. You and I, we had done some stuff, and I think you and Eric had sat me down. In fact, I know where it was. We were, what was the Buck Owens Crystal Palace? We were there that night to let you guys meet that guy from Nashville and talk to him. So I stayed out of that, of course. But I remember talking, and I said, I kept thinking, what are we missing? And it was my way of asking you guys, what's next? What do we got to do? And I think Eric said, we need to play some bigger gigs. Eric said, look, get us 30 gigs at local places, write them down, then let's go to bigger places and say, look, we've already played these 30, we sell them out, call the owners. They loved us being there. And now we want to play this one that holds 1,000 people or 2,000. And Eric had said, the problem is you're going to have to pay to get in there. And I said, I don't understand what that means. I thought when you're a musician, they paid you. And Eric said, look.
Not the beginning.
Yeah. He said, you're going to go to some of these places. You're going to find some stuff. And Eric said he'd work with me on where to go. He said, but you're going to have to go in and give them $5,000 or $8,000 up front. And then we market it, they market it. And then whatever the door is. Yeah. If it covers the 8,000, then we're good, and we can start splitting revenue after that. But they want to be, you're renting their stage. Yeah. And I said, okay. So I said 5 to 8. He goes, big ones are about 12 to 15. But if we can get enough of an audience, we can get there. And I'm like, okay, everywhere we go, nobody wants you guys to leave. Everybody wants to keep drinking and singing and playing.
Good time, yeah.
So we're doing venues that are, anywhere from 80 to 300 people. I'm ready for this. So I had about $40,000 set aside.
Oh God.
It's true. This is a true story, Bryan.
I know, that's what scared me,
true
man.
story.
Oh my
and
God.
I went and I said, look, I want to do this. She goes, you don't know what you're doing. And I go, but look how good I've done for not knowing what I'm doing. I kind of, we're getting there. And she goes, are you sure? I said, look, this isn't going to absolutely break us. If we could still do stuff. And she goes, all right, if that's what you want to do. And I had called Eric and said, I want to meet with you and Bryan. I got this idea. And Eric was like, no, don't, I know what you're trying to do, but he goes, we can't risk it. It won't work if it doesn't work. I said, look, I got this. And I remember telling Eric, I go, could you just shut the fuck up and let me do this? And he goes,
sound like you.
And he goes,
shut up, Eric.
Well, I told him, I said, and I go, look, man, I'm not trying to be a dick. You said this is what you need for someone to tell you this is what we're doing. So I'm telling you, I'm tired of you whining about this. If this is what's next, then let me try it. If I mess it up, it's on me.
You're a rubber meets the road kind of guy.
And let's go.
Yeah.
And then it was right about then, I want to say a month later, before you and I got to talk, you let go of Gabe. And you and Gabe, I go, well, what happened to Gabe? And you're like, it just didn't work out. And he was a mechanic, going to go back to working on Toyotas, I think it was.
Yeah, at the time, I think, everybody's just kind of struggling, trying to.
And I said, okay. And I didn't get into the particulars of why it wasn't working out with Gabe or what the situation was. I don't know if you didn't think he played right or he didn't fit right, or I didn't ask. It didn't matter. It was right about the time that I was coming charging down the road with a fistful of money, running, going, Bryan, look what I got. And right about then you're like, we don't even have a band anymore. And I'm like, God damn it.
I think I remember having a brief conversation.
And it was
that close.
It was right there. And I don't know. Maybe I would have blown through it and it would have all been screwed up. I don't know, because the other thing that Eric told me, he says, you're going to have a hard time highway down going further. And I said, why? He goes, because we're old. He told me the time, he goes, we're not like 21 years old and they're looking for 21, 25, 27. And I went, what does that matter? Do you hear how you sound? He goes, it matters because we have to be in, there's at some point, you're in the public eye with up close personal interviews, and you're on. He goes, it's a lot different than when you're a little farther away on a stage and you're behind an album cover. He goes, just so you know, he was very upfront with me about it.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, he definitely is a quick study on things, and so you'll get analytical sort of details about this is the way it works, and he's got all the formulas, and but I think obviously, like anything, it has cycles, and it's definitely a different climate and atmosphere. Obviously, when it comes to females, it definitely have a time limit, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think guys got a little more, I'm not
but
saying
then
it's fair.
People there's George Jones and George Strait that can still make.
Well, yeah, it's just different era, different time,
But they even made albums when they were older, but they already built.
Well, they already had their fan base,
okay.
Right? It's one thing to have your fan base, but I think there's actually a lot of wiggle room in the industry now for aging artists, as long as the material is good. I think it's changed a lot, just the way music is brought to the audience and what people have an appetite for. It's definitely different. It's not just, you're not just selling sexuality and appearance. You're actually selling something of substance. It's just, again, like anything, it's the biggest thing for me is I was just unwilling at some point to go sleep on somebody's couch in order to get there. And I mean, that's honest. I just, I don't want to do 3 a.m. loadouts. I don't want to do that, man.
Well, when I met you at that time, you were married.
And I am still married. And speaking of which, because obviously this makes it back to my wife now.
Yeah.
She's go, what happened to me? Hello. And I have an 11-year-old son.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got 13 years. It's crazy.
Now, I don't know a ton about your wife. Met her a few times. Yeah. Got along with her very well.
A musician, incredible musician.
Yeah, but I was going to say she's big in Europe.
Yes.
I mean, like
in Denmark.
In Denmark.
Yeah.
Like she walks
very small
around,
part of Europe, but yes,
still,
big in
she
Denmark.
She walks around and people know who she is.
Oh yeah, she was a household name. She had a 10-year TV career. She was a house pianist on a show. It was big, like the Singing Bee. I don't know if you remember that show. There was a
vaguely,
show. Yeah. So anyway, but it was like the Danish version of the Singing Bee, and they'd have all these celebrities come on and they'd sing these popular songs, and then she was the house keyboardist. So she became quite well known. It was like a hit show every Friday night. I'll have to watch,
Sure.
I can't remember the name of the show. So yeah, my first experience with celebrity was really Married to Her, going to Denmark and realizing all these people. Yeah, one of these kind of.
Well, your job was to carry her bags in Denmark.
Pretty much, what it felt like a little bit. Now she would disagree with that. I didn't make it, but
you were definitely
at first, it was more of a spectacle. It was pretty wild, and actually, first time seeing my mug in a tabloid, that's weird. Like, I made it to the tabloids. I must be big time.
That's right.
I'm married to a star.
Yeah.
So, then I also, she had a band. God, time flies. It's crazy. I guess it's been 6-7 years now, or longer, 8 years, something like that. But they had formed a kind of their own version of a super group there.
Right.
And they all had like individual pop careers, and so they put this group together. And so I had the privilege. They were nice enough to let me tag along. I spent one of my first, kind of like maybe my second or third trip there. I spent the whole summer touring with them, playing backup, and they cut my songs, man. I've had probably a good at least six songs that they've cut on, over the last 3 records they'd made. And they actually had one of my songs was a bit of a hit for them, which was really cool. I've made more money on foreign royalties than I've ever made here, collectively. So yeah, I'm big in Europe, in Denmark.
In Denmark, yeah. Well, that's good stuff, man. I knew that there was something there about that, but it's just interesting how all of the areas of your life, they were just one domino after another that took you to different places and different things and the ups and downs.
Life's crazy, man.
And then it brought us together at that weird point, and then it was like at that moment we were almost ready to, and
launch,
and then it just didn't.
Failure to launch.
And I just figured that. When Gabe was gone, and then it was okay because you guys didn't sound like you were going to go find another drummer. It kind of sounded like you guys were going.
It's a tough one. Let me explain it this way. We were basically, I was a songwriter.
Right.
I was basically a solo artist that put together a group in order to make an album appear to be a band. Right.
Okay.
And for the most part, it was a band, but that's kind of how it started. Me, Eric, making demos.
Right.
I cut my songs and then go, hey, what about the idea of working together? So, and that's kind of how it started, and so none of us were session players, right? Eric's not a session player. Gabe's definitely not a session player, but we've all like either recorded or cut records and with different bands and whatnot.
Sure.
And so we're just working out to the best of our ability. We got some very talented people involved. Kerry Park.
Well, there's the name I was going to tell you.
He pretty much cut all the electric guitars and whatnot you hear. We got some other.
You told me his story, and I had to go. It was like, go shake that man's hand.
You should do an interview with him. He's right up in Fraser Park. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go see him here after I leave this evening.
If you would have him down here, I would love to.
I'm sure he'd love to because he's got some story. He comes from a heritage of great music. His dad was a well-known.
Well, you guys all pointed to him like, don't shake our hands, shake his. I'm like, well, I don't know him, and you're like, we're not. You're telling me
the guy's a master musician. He's, he really to this day he cuts all of my stuff. I let him.
Do you think he'd even remember coming here and playing?
Oh yeah, of course he does.
You think so?
Oh, of course he does. Yeah,
I would love to have
because he's all. It's freaking damn cold up here, man. What am I doing here? Yeah, it was one of those kind of.
But you had somebody come out and play violin that time. Was a girl.
Yeah, Aubrey Richmond. And I'm still friends with her, and she's played with Shooter Jennings and a bunch of gigs. She's gotten. She's still in L.A. A lot of these are still. They're all working musicians. I just had different priorities in my life. Sure. I'm a writer. I'll always be a writer. I'm an artist. I'll always be an artist.
Right.
But I'm not willing, to just again go sleep on somebody's couch till I make it.
Right.
I just had different priorities. So that's kind of my story. And I will say, I'm not going to tell you more, but I am actually in talks with a publisher right now.
Good.
At a possibility of, and this is a Nashville guy, and so we'll see. We'll see.
Now, remember, if things don't go well, you call me, and I'll make them go well.
There you go.
I know, right? What you say?
I have days. Yeah.
I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I can tell you one thing. I didn't feel like intimidated with you around, man. I it's like, hey, man, definitely Mark's the guy, man.
I just wanted.
You need a mover and shaker. It's like, oh, we got a problem here.
Yeah.
No problem at all, man.
Talk to our manager. He's right over there.
There you go.
We got a guy for this.
Yeah.
You can mess with us.
Yeah.
Well, it was an absolute privilege hanging out with you guys for those couple years, and who knows if it would have gone anywhere or not. But I always look back on those times with you guys with fond memories all the time.
And to put that out there, I still occasionally stay. Like I just reached out to Gabe the other day. I got a song. He's a dad, and obviously I played the song for you guys, and called My Boy. I wrote it for my son, and so I've been reaching out to dads like, hey, you mind contributing a photo or whatnot of you and your son? I'm going to make a Father's Day video for this. I just figured it'd be a touching kind of tribute, and so I reached out to Gabe the other day, and I I have good rapport with everybody. Everybody's still friends,
Right.
Myself and Eric, we stay in touch, and I think we all know we're not delusional about the whole thing. Like we all know what's involved,
Right.
and it's just at a different point in our life where it's like it'd be one thing for in our 20s. Like, man, let's go and let's hit the road. And it's like, man, I don't want to do that.
It takes a lot of energy and commitment to do this. It really does.
Man. It drains you, and it's just, it's an exercise in futility to some degree, because you just feel like what is going on, man?
Do you remember the one thing you and I butted heads on about Highway Down?
Maybe there's a few things, but I remember you're pretty,
You wanted to change the name.
Oh, you're right.
I'm like, you're not changing the name.
I know.
Highway Down, what a great country name.
I know.
And you're like, no, we got to check. I go, you are not changing the fucking name.
It was a good name.
It was a great name.
I've had several people say, that's a great country rock
and
name,
you were walking around moping going,
I know.
Before we do anything, we should really change the name. Like, okay, does somebody want to slap him or should I do it? This is insane. It's a great name.
Leave it to an artist to get in their own head, right? Second guess everything.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That was one of the things Eric pulled me aside. He goes, just let him work through this. Don't just let him finish talking to himself. Yeah. He's fine over there.
Pretty much. I mean, that was a great thing about like Eric. He's a very pragmatic kind of guy. He just, artists can be deeply emotional and stupid, with emotion.
Well, you guys second guess yourself so much.
I know.
And I know that I get that now. I didn't know that then. Everything seemed, and I was wrong, but everything seemed so cut and dry to me. I had no idea what I was getting into. I just thought, things are what they are, and we go.
Yeah, we do this and we do that, and
right.
There you go.
And
this is good, and therefore it will succeed.
That's right. You guys had done.
If only.
To me, you guys had done the hard work. I'm like, you guys made a hit record. It's a hit album.
And it is a good record. I obviously I don't spend my time like listening to it. Every once in a while, I'll just go and by the way, I might have to snag a couple of those because I don't actually have any CDs out here. It's crazy.
I think we have some still.
Yeah,
I think
I'll be happy to pay for them.
Yeah, well, they're on our website for.
There you go.
I think we lowered them to $5.
Yeah, wholesale, fire sale. Take them, please. Yeah, it actually was a good record. Love the cover art. That's funny. I was in Denmark. We were trying to like assemble the art and all that for the CD, and I had reached out to an artist because I saw that photo and I go, that's it. If anything describes, kind of the sound and kind of where I'm at in my life, the attachment and just go out,
It was perfect.
It was perfect. And as a matter, the guy lived in Denmark, had actually had a studio in Copenhagen for, I don't know, I think like 10 years or something. But he was living in LA. I was in Denmark at the time.
Wow.
I reached out to him. He responded. I said, hey, what is it? What's it going to take to, get this for a cover art? And so we worked out a deal. And I actually ended up meeting him out in LA. He lived south of the LAX in the part of LA there. And funny how that is, though. Here he is. He had a studio in Denmark. I'm in Denmark.
He's in
at
LA.
The time, in LA.
Where you just came from.
Yeah, and so and then of course the fold out, the art in there. We went up to that particular because it was up in not Desperia. Where's the other place? Victorville.
Well, I was going to say that the artwork inside looked like
it is that trailer.
It looked like it was either Lancaster or Victorville.
It was
area.
Victorville.
Yeah.
So we went up to that particular with a photographer friend of ours, also another musician, and shot the interior of that. So It was pretty cool, man. Look, it was all a great experience, and it was my first official album. I hadn't made an album. I made like an EP with like a 5-song EP with a friend of mine, and it just, some years back. But
you guys have a not a long documentary about this on YouTube still. That interview.
Oh yeah, the EPK they call that. Yeah, electronic press kit. Yeah, we had done that also, and I still reach out to him, the guy that cut that. But yeah, I mean, there was some. It was again. I've met great people as a result of it. Friend that still engineers all my stuff, engineered that record. That was the first. I met him at a Simi Valley bar of all places.
Wow.
This is after my divorce and coming out here and floundering what to do. And I was working with Eric, and we were kind of putting this together. And so ended up meeting my friend Ryan, which it'd be great to have him on. I'm sure he can tell you lots of stories, man.
The engineer guy.
Yeah, because he's worked with everybody, seen everybody. It's crazy. He's got crazy stories. But yeah, I met him, played him a song, and he agreed to kind of work with us, and he engineered, mixed that record, and
so what are you doing today? You said you were in Colorado?
I have I purchased property back in 2021 in Colorado. I just got priced out of the market here, man, and unfortunately, I had a bad business deal in 2019 that kind of set me back, and so. Unrelated to construction. I should have just stuck with construction. But needless to say, remodel and working with my hands has been kind of my saving grace.
Right.
It's made me money, and I'm pretty good at it. And so I've been able to make a living at it. And so I ended up buying property in Colorado, and so I'm in the process of building a house there, and I have an unbelievable view.
So you're still in Simi?
I'm staying with the engineer friend of mine right now. He's been kind enough to. He's there. He's got a 4-bedroom house, and allows me to stay when I'm.
So
in
where's
town.
your wife and kid?
They're in Denmark.
Okay.
And so back in 2020 with the lockdowns and all, my wife's never really made like real money here as a musician, and it's just been everything from delivering groceries to you name it, try to
sure.
Make up for whatever we lacked, but nothing was really happening. She's unfulfilled, and she had her band, and they were on tour still, in spite of they didn't really shut down their country.
Right.
And so I said, you know what? I don't want my son staring at a screen, because our governor, basically in state and cities enforced this
right.
social distancing nonsense to the point where kids were basically stuck at home staring at screens.
Right.
And I didn't want my kids staring at a screen. It was an unhealthy situation. So, and now we know, hindsight.
Yeah.
The lockdowns.
Proven now.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get them to apologize for it, though.
No.
So anyhow, I sent my son with her to Denmark, put him in school, and we'll just see how it goes. And of course, now it's going on 4 years. It's crazy.
Yeah.
She's making great money. So
your kid's probably doing real well.
He is doing well. It's tough being without your dad. I go there on a quarterly basis, pretty much. I was there for 4 weeks for Christmas, New Year's. It's been challenging.
I bet.
It's not ideal,
No.
Trying to be
is the idea for you to finish that house, then everybody moves back to Colorado?
No, yeah. I don't want to get in front of,
Oh, get out. Yeah. Don't get over your skis on that.
That's her decision. Yeah. But, I committed to, I've spent the last, 10, 15, 20 years off and on building other people's dreams. I want to build my own. I've never had a chance to build my own house. I built other people's homes. And so I want to build my own, and I want it to be something that I can actually pass on to my kids. And it's an unbelievable view and incredible environment. I love the outdoors. And so the plan is to build. My son's actually going to come out. The plan is to have him come out for about 6 weeks in the summer.
Good.
So, give him a chance to. There's a camp I've signed him up for. And
how old is he now?
He's 11. 11 years old.
Well, listen, if you guys are ever driving between these two places,
yeah,
please stop by here.
The
Come
kid, of course, like all kids, everybody wants to be a YouTube star, right? So, and he's sharp as a whip. He's like, incredibly funny. He has great comedic timing to the point where it's uncomfortable. Like, oh God, good timing, but bad time, Timothy. But he's hilarious and he's a riot, and I'm sure he would absolutely love it here. I mean,
you could come by. I'm telling you, we got a spare bedroom here. It's always made up. Bathroom's right around that corner. Stay for a night or two. Let your kid and Briggs and I film some stuff.
Oh, he would absolutely love it. He would eat it up.
We'd have such a good time just doing that.
Oh, I bet.
Probably some stuff we can put out there too if we can edit it up and make it funny and keep it short and simple. I bet it'd be great.
Oh yeah, and it would just make his day, man. Because he.
Well, Bryan, I love you like a brother, and you have an open invitation anytime you ever want to come by here.
Sorry it took so long.
No, I figured you didn't pressure you at all. I had no idea what you were doing.
I've been promising. I promise I'll get there.
But you'll come by when you get a chance, so I just let you go. Every now and then, I'd throw out a little.
You have to prod me. Hey,
little thing. Like, dude, don't forget. That's all I was saying. Because, what would be something fun to do one time is just get you and Gabe and Eric in here, because we do it where they can all sit around the table. We got cameras on all the microphones, and let's just talk about the Highway Down era, the stuff that we went through.
Yeah, because it'd be good to get their perspective. I want to say that I was pretty observant, but there's things you just miss. It'd be fun. I love people's perspective on me, and I like to laugh at myself. I'm like, I'm probably way too in my head, and
well, I think it would be great to do it one time, and all the offshoot stories that would come from those things like that. And I've never talked with Gabe. He may sit and go, "You were the worst thing
actually
that ever happened. You should. You're the reason that we
actually." He's. I think he will admit that he improved as a drummer as a result, because obviously we had some pretty heavy talent that we were trying to live up to, and it's like he had to play at a studio musician level.
Do you know secretly I know something about the three of you? Are
you going to divulge it?
I am right now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, and it's going to be out there. I forget what gig that you guys were playing, and we were sitting there, and you guys were setting up your stuff. You went through a couple, like you guys do, a couple chords of a song or something to tune in and get going. Because I've seen you do it here too. And I said, "Are you guys ready?" And you shook your head and go, "God, Eric's just got to get in sync or something." I go, "What's he?" I forget what you said. Like he was running behind, or he was a little slow. He goes, "He's got to step it up. He's not playing fast enough
like
or something."
Time on the
it was something on the time. And I said, "Oh, all right, and whatever." To get together. That's 20 minutes later, you guys did another thing, and he comes off there. He goes, "Gabe better get his shit together, man. He's got to get he's got to get that. He's got to pick up the
Everybody's
pace,
got criticism for the other guy, right?"
I was like, well, so it's a Gabe. But
it's like, it's really the band thing. It's kind of like a marriage, like this sort of like crazy open marriage where everybody's got some sort of like tussle. And
it was so funny to hear you guys just like, where everything's going great, but Gabe's got to get his shit. Got to be a little faster. And then you come up, Eric's got to get his stuff together. I'm like, so nobody's playing right tonight.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, I had plenty of moments where I felt disappointed, and there were times I felt like I was carrying it, because I could just tell they just, 'cause Eric has a very short attention span, and then once he checks out, and then of course Gabe, everybody's, we got day jobs, we got lives. Man, there was times I was fucking deathly sick, man. I remember doing a gig, and I got through that gig with Jameson and a couple of beers.
You self-medicated to get through it.
I self-medicated. I was sick as a dog. I remember just being like, oh my God, about to pass out, in fact. I made it, and I had people come up and like, oh my God, it was amazing. I was like, what? I can, barely stand up.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm telling you.
Sometimes as artists, sometimes you just got to deplete yourself. You get in your own head. You get in your own way.
I've never seen you perform poorly, not one time.
Well, you plenty of time, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
And like I said, I've never said more than 3 words to Gabe ever, even when we were doing stuff. He never talked
I liked
to me.
Gabe. I liked Gabe's instinct. He may not be, the session drummer, but I didn't want a session drummer because there's a lot of people that can just play it exactly. But Gabe had a passion about him, and I like it. That part of making music where you just, I don't know, I felt like we had a thing,
Right.
And it did. It made the record what it is,
yeah,
you know?
for sure.
And if we would have just had another session player, it was like, yeah, maybe it would have just been right, but it may not have had the sort of movement in the past. I like that sort of like, is he going to make it? You know? Like, oh my God, you know? Now playing live.
Breath moment.
Well, it's just like Pete Townsend talking about Keith Moon. You know, how was to play with? It was awful playing with Keith Moon because he couldn't keep time. He was too high on coke. You know, he's just like flailing. You know, it's like so. Guess what, Pete? Instead of playing lead, Pete would play the rhythm to keep time. And guess who the solo artist is? The drummer. He's over there just flailing. You know. So, I liked Gabe in that he was really easy to get along with.
Yeah.
You know, he was game for anything, even if it was above his pay grade.
Sure.
He's like, okay, well, we're going to try it. We're going to throw it out there and see what sticks. And so I got to hand it to him, man. He actually, I think he lived up to it. I think playing live and doing that time and time again is a tough one to follow up on and to be consistent with. And I think that's where sometimes I feel like we fail. We were heavy on vocals on that record.
Yeah.
That was all me.
Right.
Because Eric doesn't sing.
Well,
Gabe could sing some.
Your wife came to the stuff. Eric's wife, Susan, she showed up to everything. I don't think I saw Gabe's family at all, ever.
Well, I think they were just busy, you know.
But Gabe could, I don't know what stories he tells right now. He could be sitting there tonight.
Well, Gabe's got his own stories,
he
you know.
He could tell a story of Highway Down and go, well,
yeah.
there was this big guy who took over and ruined everything for us.
Not at all.
We were going somewhere until that. I don't know what he's going to say because I don't know I never got a friendship with him. Wanted to, but.
I think Gabe was just happy to be playing.
Yeah.
And I think he'd tell you that, happy to be playing. And again, I think, like I've talked to him about it, and it definitely improved his playing with us.
Well, and like from my perspective, when I tried to talk, just like, hey, Gabe, you know, that was a cool set. He'd go, yep. I was like,
that was about it.
Anything else? I'm trying to get a conversation.
Okay, hello. Like, well,
I don't know. I liked him just fine. I didn't think he cared.
I got nothing against these guys, and I don't think they have anything against me. At the end of the day, it's just we're aging males, you know, in a game for youngsters, and it is very tough to go hit the road and just, you know.
Well, I think all three of you had talent. I still think you guys do. And I'm glad for the time I spent with you. I hope whatever's working out. I hope it finally pays you back. I hope the industry pays you back for all the time you've put in. I hope that's where whatever it is, I hope that's where that goes. I really do.
It would be nice. A paycheck would be nice. I'll be honest with that. Mailbox money is nice when now it's all direct deposit, so it just shows up in your account. And you go, oh wow,
$12 more.
Hey, there you go, man. I can buy 2 cups of coffee.
That's right. So that's what that TV money does for you. You get a hit record.
Wild,
that you need to have one of your songs in a movie or as an opening theme song.
I have had. I could probably. I haven't seen any of these films because I don't watch.
Well,
TV.
do you think that might have been good to mention during an interview? Come on, man.
But it just like it's like.
Come on, tell me now. What movie? What song?
Yeah, that and $6 will get you a cup of coffee, right? You know. It's kind of I don't know what to say other than it's like it just has kind of happened. And it's like, oh, I'll get a notice like, hey, just so you know, we got your song, you know, whatever, Dennis Quaid's in that movie, and you know, we get, you know, like, oh, cool. And that's pretty much it. Thumbs up, and that's.
Well, what movie?
Life.
What do you remember?
I don't even remember, man.
You don't remember the title of a movie you had a song in?
There was some.
We cannot be friends anymore. As of this
last
minute.
year, I know I'm terrible at this because I don't really care about it, man. I love the fact that people actually give a damn about my music. I just don't. Like, I'm not interested in the act.
I'm going to call your wife. She'll know, and she'll tell me, too. She'll know exactly. Because I'm sure she tells people. She's going to know. Your wife will know.
Probably, if I've told her. If I haven't told her, she won't know. Which is kind of, you know, something I would do is like, why didn't you tell me? I don't know. I forgot about it. Oh, my
God.
I know.
A wife being married to you. It's so frustrating.
Could you imagine trying to be a manager for me? Mark, you're just going to go, what is wrong with you,
Why
dude?
Why did you tell me that?
How are we ever going to get anywhere when you don't even bother sharing this enormous news. This is success. Well, I
don't know, but if I drug you out and held you over a cliff and go, from now on, you're going to tell me shit, I think you'd remember.
I probably
Good
would.
God, man. There's so many cool things going on.
There are some cool things,
You talked about them so little in life, you've now forgotten.
It's so weird because it's just like most of us, don't we just like get on with our life, just busy, on the next thing. It's like it's kind of survival mode. Like I don't have time to sit around and, bask and.
I know you don't. I know, but
time, man.
Yeah, you're the type of guy who I go to your house and you got 3 gold records, and I go, "Are they up on the wall someplace?" Oh no, wait, I got those.
Oh, hold on, they're
somewhere.
Yeah,
hold
dusty
on.
old.
If
Yeah,
you need to see one. I got them. Hang on.
What's that?
I think they're in a closet here.
Probably. I mean, I think like my buddy's got some placards. He has some platinum and gold and so he's got this little studio set up where display most low key. Unassuming, you'd never know. It's just Southern boy, and and I think a lot of people that it's a living, it's a lifestyle. They're very grateful, but it's like they just don't go around gloating. It's just like it's something I do. I don't know. Fandom's weird for me. I'll be honest with you. That's something that I'm a little bit. And you're getting that experience now, where I don't know if every experience you've had with your fan base is good. But most fans can get a little weird, people, it's like kind of like you want to like get a life,
yeah. Well, we had a stalker once too.
So. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Nothing that far from me.
I think this guy had been a stalker before because he really started stalking all different aspects of our social media. Then he started showing up at places of business where our staff works, not related to what we're doing Gen X Talks. I think the problem was he didn't anticipate me. Because when I found out where his name was and where he lived, I sent him a picture of his house, and I said, "Pay attention."
There you go, payback.
Because this is it. I know where you live. I know where you work. I know what you're doing. This is your one chance to walk away.
Knock it off.
He said, "I'm not going to tell you again," and then it's going to be on. Yeah. You know who actually got rid of him was my wife. She actually wrote him a letter and said, "You're messing with my son because you're messing with Briggs." And I said, "And I'm going to set my husband after you, and then it's over. You won't be. I can't stop him once I tell him to go. I can't call him and go, stop, don't drive any further." So once I tell him that, you're done. And after her letter, we never heard a thing. So that's the only
Sometimes you have to go there, man.
Oh,
it's a shame that you have to, because like, again, it takes people like you for people like me to actually have a voice, because if nobody listens, nobody cares, I need fans, but it gets a little weird sometimes, it's like, I feel like I disappoint people. I think that's my problem.
Well, there you see. That's
my thing,
and that goes back to Eric saying we need a rock star up there. I know. We need to find. You got to have that lead singer mentality. So
I need the David Lee Roth sort of like persona.
A little bit of that.
A little bit of that.
Everything you're doing is fine. Everything you do is good. Just go.
Yeah,
it's all going to be fine. I had a cop pull me over one time just to get a picture. He wanted a picture for Gen X Talks.
Well, look at that.
And I said, all right.
So you thought you were getting pulled over for a ticket or something?
Right.
And they said, oh, hey, I recognize you. I got to get a picture.
Yeah, because we had on the truck I was driving, the kid, we put a magnet on the back that just said Gen X Talks. So you drive around, you can see it. It was on the tailgate, about this big.
Yeah.
And this cop pulls me over. He said, "You know why I pulled you over?" I said, "I have no idea." I said, "I was not speeding." He goes, "Can I get a picture?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "Well, you're the Gen X Talks guy." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You get a picture, no ticket though, right?" He goes,
ticket.
Yeah, no ticket.
No ticket, man.
And then I've been down in Fontana in LA and you pull into a gas station and you can see somebody looking like, is that the guy? Is that the guy?
Yeah.
The story Briggs will tell you is the opposite of that. And because when we go places and then someone will notice you and say something, and then we went to Lowe's, and I walked in with him to Lowe's one day. I said, "Man, I just want to get in and get out of here. I don't want anybody to say hello, and let's just do the thing." And we go in, we get our stuff, we come out, and I'm staring at Lowe's and from the parking lot. He goes, "What?" I go, "Nobody recognized me, man. Nobody said anything." He goes, "Isn't that what you wanted?" I said, "Well, now it bothers me."
Yeah.
So we went in next week, and I wore my shirt that said Gen X Talks on it.
That's too funny.
And he goes, "You're really going to be upset if no one notices you this time." I mean, I'm backing into people.
Sorry about that.
Nobody recognized me again. That is twice now I've gone to Lowe's. I'm like,
that's funny.
And Brace goes, "Dad, just stop."
I would have figured of all places like Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that, you'd most likely,
Yeah, you think
who knows?
And when you're wearing the shirt, it
like,
says so right on it. Not one person both times,
That's
I tell
funny.
you. This country, what's it coming to?
I'm telling you, man. Just don't know a good thing when they have it.
Those are the stories Briggs will tell you, not the fun ones where people come up and say nice things or they drive.
No,
we have those venues that we did in Vegas. We've had people tell me, I'm driving from the East Coast. I'm cashing in my vacation days, and I'm spending all my vacation money just to come to this. And they'll tell us that they're spending, this is their vacation for the year.
That's pretty, see, that's the kind of stuff where you feel responsible.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that weighs on you.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
When
I don't want to disappoint them.
I had to, we invented something when we were there that, we had all these people in this venue, and I asked the people that were hosting it, if you guys got a microphone? And they did. Had a very good PA system in this area. I said, give me the mic. And they went and got it. And I just started talking. I walked around the room. Where'd you come from? What's your name? What's your screen name on here? How do we know you? Thanks for coming and make fun of people. This one guy, this one kid, true story, last year, he was, I want to say 23 or 24. And over the course of the 2 nights that we did this gig, someone said, he came all the way from Mexico. And so I went up and talked to him. He didn't want to come talk to me. He was nervous. My wife says, you got to go talk to him. He won't come over. He's too nervous to come see you.
Probably like broken English, kid.
A little bit. He was pretty good English, though. Yeah. But he goes, I just don't want to bother him. Yeah. And my wife said, no, go say hello. So I went up to him, introduced myself. We asked a few questions. Where are you from? How'd you get here? And he gave me the basics on it. So when it came time for the public thing with the microphone, when I got to him, I said, so what's your name? And I already knew a little bit. He told me, he said, where are you from? I said, you having trouble with Border Patrol? Did you have to swim around the fence to get here, sneaking through a truck?
Everybody's like,
I know, they all
right,
did.
yeah, like, did he just say, oh my God?
And the kid's laughing, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And he goes, no, he goes, I snuck across the border with my truck. I just, made a joke of it and stuff. But it turns out the guy spent all his money to get here, didn't have a hotel, didn't have hardly food money, was sleeping in the parking lot of the hotel in Las Vegas just so he could go to this event. Paid for his ticket. He got a ticket.
I kind of get chills, and some of that means so much.
But I found that out after it was over, and I sent everybody, go find him.
Yeah.
I go, somebody go find him. Let's give him some gas money. Let's see if he wants to stay a night. We can put him up in the. Let's get him. And they couldn't get to him. But that kid right there is one of the reasons where you got to remember to be humble about what you're doing.
And I am.
Because people. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Where you think I'm not doing enough of the right thing if I'm not responding correctly to guys like that.
I know. And I think about that a lot, and that weighs on me. So it's like any pursuit I have of this, I think about the responsibility that comes with it.
Sure.
And I don't want to disappoint people. And sometimes I think, well, I'm going to disappoint people, man. I don't want to put myself out there. I know.
That was one of the reasons I grabbed the microphone. I thought, if I just sit in my chair in the corner and let people come up and say hello to me all night, it's kind of like you're sitting there to come up, kiss the ring. And I don't want to come across that way. So I got out and tried to do as much as I could.
That's good.
That obligation is how you feel too.
I do.
You just don't know always how to go do it. It's like, I know I got to do something here to get out there.
I think it's more of the, I don't know if I'm willing to make that sacrifice because, and honestly, it's selfish. That's what it is, because I don't know if I'm ready to give that much of myself.
You know what though? But if they bought your record and they drove all the way across town,
I owe it to them.
You do. And if I would have been your manager, I'd have said, "Yeah, I'm really with you on that, Bryan. I'm not sure if you should do this either." And I'd have kicked you right out there and said,
and I would, and I agree with you, and that's why I've avoided, because I realize there is you do have an obligation. Once you put yourself out there, you have an obligation.
I agree.
And so I've never been that hungry for it. And maybe that's why I haven't succeeded. It's probably exactly why I haven't succeeded, is because I've just been unwilling to sleep on the couch, sort of.
Well,
not that I haven't made sacrifices.
No, I was going to say you have
plenty of sacrifices.
But just like when you first got here to the house today, and we were talking before we came in studio, I said, if someone asked me to go do a laundromat opening, I'll go.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's like, well, you can't lower yourself to go do a grocery store.
Why not?
Yes, I can. Watch me. I don't care if 3 people show up. Then 3 people are going to be fully entertained. Fine. I don't care.
And if I commit to that, and I've done things that I know I shouldn't be. It's on the record. Or something out there. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I agreed to sing on this. I mean, I could tell you some stories. Anyhow, but it's like, oh, you like what I do? Great. Would you? Yeah, sure. I'll give you $300. Okay, sure, no problem. Right. So I've done those things. I'm not, too proud to stoop down and just.
Well, and for me, this is a short-lived thing. I won't. Sure. The most I can think of is that maybe the radio station will turn into something, and I can be like Art Bell, where I'm talking about things in the middle of the night and stuff. And if it does, that's fine. But if this only goes for another year or two, and then it kind of runs its course, then it was a great time that we had doing it, and I'm pushing as hard as I can in it the whole time. And Gen X Talks has luckily changed from just these little ambush videos into many more facets. So now there's a lot going on. It's now like this whole brand that very slowly
I know I got a bit
forward.
of the
I like that. I'm okay with it for as long as it lasts. I'm all right.
Well, I think you have to be open to change, be willing to adapt, because culture keeps changing, and the way people view things and engagement and all of that, it's just constantly changing. So I get that. And I think that's my biggest thing is I'm a bit set in my ways. I just like writing the song, make the best version of that song I can, and then put it out.
Right.
And all the other shit that goes on around it, I don't know. I'm not really good at that, That's my problem,
I get it. Well,
so
I think had I known you longer before Highway Down, I believe that I might have learned more of your idiosyncrasies like Eric had. I would have learned a little bit more like, okay, you guys tell me this is where you want to go. And not only was I trying to figure out how to get us there as us, I say us, it was really you guys, to get everybody there, but I was trying to figure you guys out along the way, which was difficult because I didn't know when to push or when to pull back. And I think if I had known you a year or two prior, I think I would have had a better relationship where I say, Bryan, you got to trust me on that. I think I could have, at that time, I just went, well, you know it better than I do. So if you say,
I know,
wait, I'll wait. But I think at the time, like you say, the part you don't like doing, the part you're not interested in, I think would have been sometimes someone saying, Bryan, you got to do it. Yeah. You're good at it. You just don't know you're good at it.
And typically, I will. I've done all kinds of things I was uncomfortable with. Like, it was, whatever, And it's not beneath me. I'm a human being just like everybody else.
You just have your comfort zones, like we all do.
Things, just like I care to do or I don't do. Yeah, like you said. But it's a tricky thing, trying to be the kind of working artist, and I don't know, I guess I've never really gotten comfortable with it because I don't know, I don't feel like I've ever.
How come you can't write songs and just give them to other people? I heard that's what a lot of people do is they write a song and then, like I learned.
Because there's a path there too.
When Prince died, I had no idea that he had written so many songs that were famous.
Yeah, but it's Prince,
So what?
He had to go through the same process that every artist has to go through in order to get to the point where it's like, now he's got, hundreds, a cachet of music that everybody wants to get their hands on and has participated in. And so, that's where I'm in, like I said, I'm in discussion with a new discussion with a publisher on that potential of getting songs placed. Cause that's where, ultimately it's all about songs. You got to have a song. It's one thing to have an artist, have a pretty face and but you got to have a song, And so if you got a song that connects with people, then you got a shot.
Would you, if you got with the producer in a situation, would you try to write a song knowing the artist that's going to sing it? Would you try to cater the song?
I don't know how to write like that, man. That's the only thing that's probably discouraged me from doing the Nashville thing, because Nashville's about group writing, and they get, because there's a bunch of songwriters that are on, payroll.
Right.
So the whole town is kind of 3 or 4 songwriters getting together, or 2 songwriters, 2 to 3 at least. And it's a co-writing town, and I've just not been good at that. And perhaps if I spend enough time at it, perhaps it would just become routine. But I find it more distracting than helpful for me.
Right.
I tend to find that the times that I have gotten together with others, it may stimulate an idea in my head, and then I want to run off in my little corner and then finish it. And that's kind of how my mind works. I find that in the company of people, it's hard to sit and come up with a collaborative effort. I find myself, I don't work well with others.
But do you think by yourself, could you write a song? Do you think you could write a song?
I have.
Knowing the person that's going to sing it, could you think you could write a song thinking this is the voice that's going to?
I've written stuff that's very, idea specific, right? I have written like my wife's band. I go, this would, I have.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're looking for material because I know they're
and
trying.
You know who's going to play it,
and you know who's going to play it, and so this would work really great. And so I've come up, not necessarily like going in, I'm going to write a song for them, but just writing a song, going, this would work.
Yeah,
I could hear this doing well, and actually being steered in that direction to come up with something that would work well. So I have written like themed, like.
I'm telling you, Bryan, you're always 1 minute away from the industry paying you back for all the time, and I hope you get there. I hope you cross that finish line. If there's somebody that I've met doing all this stuff that I've been involved in the last 2 or 3 years, you deserve it as much as anybody.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
And I would love to get I'd love to get Highway Down back here when you guys all have time.
It would be fun.
It would be so fun.
Yeah,
to get everybody here.
Gabe's a riot. He's another one. I know he was short with you.
He's quiet. He's just
because
really quiet
he's probably just going, heck, I got to load up all this gear. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, Gabe, if you're ever listening to this interview, man.
There you go, man.
I love you too,
Get
but
your butt over
you
here,
never
man.
let me be in, man. You wouldn't take me into the band.
Yeah. No, but he's a riot too, man. Real funny guy. And so, I mean, again, we had some fun moments and some aggravating moments, but that can be said with any kind of band setup situation. It just kind of... You're in the moment, and you're just trying to get through it and do the best you can and absorb whatever good thing you could get out of it, And
well, I have a confession about Eric. I really didn't like him too much, but his wife was so pretty that I could whenever
Eric,
Susan was around, it was like, no, I don't care if Eric shows up because his wife's going to be here, so we're good.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
She's got to be.
She definitely is the kind of the human part of the relationship. She's extremely
well. She's also doesn't mind being married to rock and roll because she has sacrificed.
Oh, she loves rock. They love that. They embrace the culture. They love it.
Yeah, she's been like she will go.
Eric's the one that's kind of uncomfortable with it. That's my wife. He just lets her do all of the
Yeah. Well, she worked for some magazines back in L.A. She knew all the rock and roll people.
Well, Eric was a stalker, right? Did he ever tell you that story about him being a stalker?
On her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Did he tell you about that?
Yeah, that was part of the.
But having known Eric now, I can see that. Enough conversation with Eric. I see that. Yeah, it's fine.
I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
But I love Eric. He's actually a good guy. He will go out of his way to help you. He's actually helped me quite a bit over the years.
Well, I can't be friends with Eric anymore. He got into model trains in a big. He's
a bit of a geek.
Big weird. Well,
he's a nerd.
I guess he went to a model train convention in Bakersfield.
He's pretty good at it.
He didn't tell me.
Oh wow.
He came to Bakersfield
and didn't even tell you.
Posted it on Facebook and then went home.
But that's Eric, though. He likes his alone time. He's a bit of.
I just tell you,
you didn't invite me.
I'm gonna pick up that little guy because he's little. He's only
he is a little.
He's like 4'11", 85 pounds. I'm gonna pick him up by his.
Mark,
he always wears a shirt that's like Ted Nugent threw it out, and he's wearing that kind of shirt. I'm gonna have to shake him a little bit and go.
Yeah,
dude, but we're good.
But he's pretty good at that stuff. Stuff that's meticulous.
Incredible. Yeah.
Like. Soldering, wiring, technical thing. He's really good at it.
He's incredibly good at it. He's very focused on stuff. Yeah. So that model train thing he's got built, it looks like in his garage from all his pictures.
Yeah.
It's some of the finest work I've ever seen.
It really is.
You're thinking, this is a musician whose his thoughts are in the clouds all day long about stuff. And how can you get this?
I know.
And he does it.
I know.
I think the guy paints with toothpicks is how good he is. He can do it at that
point. He's a study. He's a student of that sort of thing. He really cares about the details. And that was the thing. Eric was a big part of getting things right on the album. I got to hand it to Eric. Like he wanted it right.
Yeah.
Like dB levels. I mean, he would like,
and he still does engineering stuff now, live stuff all the time.
If anything, he probably hurts himself sometimes with to the point it details it to death. Do
you remember that last concert we did that the cops got called because they could hear the music from so far away?
Yeah.
I don't know whose equipment you guys brought, but that was such big.
Oh, you know what? It was my buddy Terry. He's now in Mississippi. And he's still he doesn't really do live sound as much as like he involved in churches.
But those speakers were big as a
it was Terry.
Wagon.
Terry was here. Terry engineered that night.
Yeah, he was here
my
that
buddy,
night.
Yeah, my buddy Terry.
But then the cop came up to our door and said, I can hear loud music far away. He goes, but I was 2 miles away. I could hear your music, and I could hear every word of the song. And I went, oh.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's how loud
the articulation,
and clear.
Yeah.
He goes, he asked what gear we had. I said, I don't know. I'm not.
No, Terry has always been known for running it really hot to the point where it's like the articulation, though. He's really good at bringing articulation to the mix to the point where it's like a sizzle. Like you can hear
He came out and he goes, this isn't, his first got here that day to set up. You guys were here early. Yeah. He goes, this isn't going to work if we're running everything on extension cords.
No.
I said, I know. I got 100 amps right here. He goes, you do not. I said, I have a 100 amp outlet right here. And I showed it to him.
He was in heaven.
He was ready to go.
Like, oh, yeah, there we go.
He goes, all right, let's bring him all the gear. Now we're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I just talked to him recently, and he's doing all right. But, it's wild, man. I've been pretty blessed with, I'm surrounded by some pretty talented people, and so I've been able to at least put good products out, because that's hard to come by. There's a lot of stuff that
very difficult.
Even stuff that in studios, I've had people hit me up like, "Who'd you use?" And it's just my buddy's studio, in his house, and just I had so and so cut drums, out of Nashville, and it's like.
But that's the difference between someone who can get the job done right.
Yeah,
it's a huge thing, and everybody.
Yeah.
So,
and that's important.
Listen, I got to wrap this up.
Right, sounds
this
good,
is
man.
Literally the longest interview I've ever done.
Really? How long has it been?
How long do you think? Just guess.
Well over an hour and a half.
2 hours and 10 minutes we've
Holy
been doing
crap,
this.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I could keep going after I pee.
Well, hey, listen, I'm going to cut it off right here, but I can't thank you enough for coming out, making the trip. You didn't have to drive all this way.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
But it's a big thing for me. Thank you for doing that.
You bet.
And hopefully my wife made a couple sandwiches, because I did promise you a sandwich.
Yeah.
That was the fee for today.
Okay. All right. There's some meat on that bread, right?
Yeah, I hope there is. She went to the store yesterday. I think we're okay.
Okay.
All right. Listen, everybody, that was Bryan Conner from Highway Down and many, many other things in his life. We got 2 hours and 12 minutes of some of the best content we've had so far.
Happy fun editing.
What's that?
Happy fun editing.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to dub your voice over to make you sound like, and he's the greatest guy ever. Well, thank you, Bryan. Thank you for saying so. But other than that, we'll get through it with flying colors. Thank you guys for putting up with both of us for a couple hours. I know you had better things to do with your day, but if you had a couple hours to waste, I think Gen X Talks was the right place to waste it. Not sure where you're listening in from around the planet, AM, FM, Sirius XM, or perhaps along the Armed Service Radio Network. Remember 2 things, wherever you go, there you are. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thanks again, Bryan.
You bet.